Hello guys, tonight we step into a gaslit Victorian avenue where the atmosphere carries coal soot, damp fabric and the faint sharp trace of somebody's fragrance, doing its best to fake respectability. You are positioned at a storefront, misting the pain with your breathing, observing your own image waver in the crooked glass while mannequins beyond stand like they have never needed to navigate stairways. The advertisements promise transformations, the containers sparkle, and every inscription suggests that you can be improved. Here is the truth bomb. You probably will not make it through this because the appearance regulations are not simply irritating, they are subtly lethal, and everybody acts like they do not see it. So before you settle in, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly appreciate what I do here. And mention your location and your current time in the comments, because I love discovering where in the world you're tuning in from while you fall asleep. Now lower the lights, maybe switch on a fan for that gentle background noise, and let's slide into tonight's exploration together. You take one pace backward from the pain and instantly sense it, that Victorian sleight of hand where appearance is not merely about seeming attractive, it is about seeming correct, seeming maintained, seeming like you fit into the proper sort of existence. The metropolis surrounding you is noisy in a dampened manner, hooves against cobbles, far away giggling, a hack that keeps hacking, and a door banging hard enough to dislodge ash from a window ledge. Amid all this, the appearance standard sells tranquility. It sells authority. It sells the notion that your physical form can be converted into testimony, verification that you are dignified, orderly and ethically upright. That is the first hazard. And it is not a flask of toxin. Yet it is the framework that your looks are your values dressed in fabric. If you seem fatigued, individuals presume you're negligent. If you seem rosy, they presume you're indecent. If your flesh seems worn, they presume you toil excessively, or worse, that you're not sheltered by a household. In a society fixated on propriety and ethical limits, your features become a credential. You can sense the weight in your upper back already, as if your bearing is meant to do half the communicating. And the communicating is relentless guidance. Essays, manners, handbooks, lectures, household speeches, merchants with viewpoints, and acquaintances who consider it their public obligation to observe you. A common historical reality sits directly beneath your souls, like a paving stone. Queen Victoria's rule from 1837 to 1901 aligns with an epoch that values dignity as a collective fixation. The bourgeoisie grows, municipalities expand, and individuals who have lately ascended the hierarchy become deeply worried about tumbling back downward. One straightforward method to monitor standing is to monitor physiques. You do not merely observe what somebody voices, you observe how they hold themselves, how light their flesh is, how restrained their garments are, how subdued their expression is, how disciplined their hunger appears. Everybody is interpreting everybody else like a publication, and regrettably, you are on the opening section. So appearance becomes an ethical vocabulary. Organic appearance is admired, but the term organic is performing significant labour, like a helper balancing three saucers and acting like it is simple. Organic does not mean unaltered. Organic means the effort is concealed, the struggle is undetectable, the expenditure is subtle, the pain is dismissed with a small, courageous grin. It is the sort of standard that makes you rehearse seeming like you do not attempt while attempting so intensely. You could virtually earn a certificate in it. You move toward a more illuminated display where an apothecary and a beauty vendor are essentially occupying the same space. This is another Victorian complication. Substances you spread on your features, substances you consume, substances you massage on your scalp, substances you breathe in your own chamber. They all blend in an untidy commercial space that does not distinguish appearance from healing. The contemporary notion of rigorous bioprotection is not present yet in the manner you would wish. Inscriptions are hopeful, assertions are ambitious, and if you are wondering, surely somebody is verifying this. The response is yes. in the way that somebody is verifying how much profit they can generate. A lady beside you examines a notice and then presses her cheek as if the paper itself has evaluated her. The notice displays a refined, light face and a phrase about cleanliness and cultivation. You observe how rapidly the communication shifts from flesh to spirit. Unblemished skin equals virtuous existence. Gentle palms equal kindness. A narrow midsection equals personal restraint. It is an entire ethical calculation, except nobody reveals you the equations and you still receive marks. Now arrives the ethical anxiety, the segment where appearance becomes questionable the instant it resembles appearance. In numerous dignified groups, conspicuous cosmetics are regarded as fraudulent, even hazardous, in a communal way. There is a long-standing connection between excessive makeup and performance, and between performance and a particular sort of permissiveness that refined society acts like it is not intrigued by. You can nearly detect the murmur behind a hand fan. Colouring is for performers, and performers are not for wedding. The contradiction is rich in a grim manner because while society criticises you for seeming painted, it also penalises you for seeming ordinary. You are requested to be a perfect fantasy, but not to display any of the magician's implements. It is like being instructed to prepare a dessert that tastes wonderful, but you are not permitted to use heat, components, or happiness. A shop worker beyond observes you watching and points toward an exhibit. Containers and packages rest in organised columns like infantry. Some are frankly cosmetic dusts and blushes. Others are masked as wellness products, skin enhancers, flesh clarifiers, circulation purifiers. This is where hazard begins to prepare itself. When appearance is presented as wellness, it becomes more difficult to challenge. When it is presented as ethics, it becomes even more difficult because challenging it begins to resemble challenging virtue itself. You lean nearer to examine a small leaflet, and here is your unusual detail for the night. One of those items that sounds like a confection and acts like a problematic skin tone. Tablets, small edible pieces promoted to assist you accomplish a transparent, refined appearance, as if your features are merely awaiting the proper snack to become socially permissible. Some variations of these sorts of treatments are whispered and occasionally recorded to include components like arsenic in small amounts. Arsenic has a terrifying record of being employed to generate a particular light, glowing outcome. It is the kind of thing that makes you want to knock the container and say, "Hello, pardon me. Did we actually choose to consume our path into visual acceptance?" The Victorians would describe it as cultivation. Your digestive system describes it as a departure notice. You can sense the reasoning constricting. If a lady is anticipated to seem vibrant and untainted, but also anticipated not to seem manufactured, then the answers will shift into hidden locations. Beneath the mouth, within the undergarment, beyond the sleeping chamber entrance, inside the elixir that arrives in a dignified container with a dignified inscription and a dignified cost. Discretion becomes portion of the item, quietness becomes portion of the appearance practice. Even suffering becomes portion of it because suffering can be reinterpreted as restraint, and restraint is revered. Scholars still debate whether the harshest Victorian appearance demands were universally experienced across civilization, or whether the most severe standards were magnified by bourgeois worry and the expanding publication culture that marketed standards faster than actual existence could ever correspond. You can detect both prospects in the avenue surrounding you. A labouring lady rushes past, features crimson from chill and natural, too occupied for notices. A fashionably dressed lady exits from a coach, features arranged like a china statue, as if the atmosphere itself is not permitted to contact her. The standard drifts between them, evaluating both in separate manners. You move away from the display and proceed, allowing the metropolis to guide you. You observe the practical adversaries of flawless looks. Ash that lands on everything, confined spaces with minimal circulation, aggressive cleansers, restricted opportunity to washing, and nutrition that relies on earnings and fortune. The physique is existing in manufacturing reality, yet being assessed by a vision that acts like reality is voluntary. If you cannot achieve the standard, you are encouraged to buy your direction toward it. If you can achieve it, you are encouraged to dread losing it. Either manner, you're spending with currency or ease or wellness. And because this is Victorian existence, the discussion arrives with a grin and a caution. Your relative might mention delicately that a lady should not worry while offering you an item that guarantees to repair what she just suggested you should not focus on. A publication might celebrate restraint while marketing you a formula for seeming more captivating, but only in the appropriate, undetectable manner. A physician might discuss your tension and your condition as if your physique is a fragile domestic creature that requires strict instruction. It is difficult not to chuckle, except the chuckling gets trapped. When you comprehend how numerous individuals embrace this as standard, you halt at a junction and observe the gas illumination flicker. The radiance makes everybody seem gentler, as if the metropolis itself has applied a filter. You can nearly grasp why the fantasy becomes habit-forming. The illumination pardons. The proper dust pardons. The proper bearing pardons. But forgiveness should not demand chemistry trials on your flesh or hidden tablets on your mouth. Still, the Victorian guarantee is tempting. If you can merely seem the role, existence might handle you improved. That is not self-regard. That is continuation with a decoration on it. A coach splashes through a pool and you recoil as filthy liquid spots your border. Your initial reaction is not well, that is unclean. Your initial reaction is, what will individuals consider? And there it is again, the hazardous kernel. Appearance as standing, looks as ethics, a collective exhibition where the consequences are communal security, work, union opportunities, and fundamental respect. You inhale, tasting coal and cold, and you continue proceeding because the metropolis continues marketing answers and the individuals continue buying optimism. Somewhere close, a shop chime sounds, and you can already predict what is beyond, a guarantee that the proper appearance can make the society gentler even if the cost is settled. Silently, in the physique, in the darkness, you move into a more illuminated quarter where storefronts have bigger sheets of glass and the paving stones seem suspiciously less grimy, like the metropolis is displaying its formal attire. The atmosphere still carries smoke, but here it is mellowed by bakery heat and costly scent. You pass a hatmaker's display packed with headwear that resemble compact interior plantings, and you glimpse yourself again. Beneath the gaslight, your flesh seems somewhat shaded, somewhat mortal, somewhat culpable of being animate. That is the difficulty. Victorian appearance desires you to seem like you are scarcely contacted by the material realm. You move inside a fabric merchant where bolts of material are accumulated like pastel mountains. Ladies navigate through the passages with deliberate composure, their tones hushed, their hand coverings tidy, their features composed in that particular manner that communicates, I am not perspiring, because dignified individuals do not perspire. In the area, a youthful assistant is organising sun shields, and you comprehend these are not merely charming additions, they are portable boundaries. A sun shield is a small covering you transport to prevent the sun from performing what the sun perpetually performs, which is contribute pigment to flesh. In this realm, a bronze is not a holiday keepsake, it is proof. Light flesh is a position indicator as noisy as a metal ensemble. It suggests that you do not toil outside. It implies you possess interior duration, interior wealth, interior assistance. It indicates you can manage to be fragile. A common historical reality rests obviously in the communal regulation in Victorian Britain and America. The perfect skin tone in numerous fashionable circles tends toward whiteness, connected to hierarchy and the concept of cultivation. The less your flesh resembles it has encountered climate, the more it resembles you fit into an existence where climate is something you witness from a pane while consuming tea and evaluating individuals. But the metropolis is packed with paradoxes. This identical manufacturing epoch that generates prosperity also generates ash, green residue, and excessive labour. Whiteness can indicate advantage, but it can also indicate sickness. A face that is excessively light might seem tubercular, and tuberculosis is a term that drifts through civilization like a phantom, half terror and half peculiar attraction. There is an odd visual mist surrounding the sickly appearance, particularly in imagery and writing, where breakable appearance becomes lyrical. You can nearly detect somebody exhaling. She seems so fragile, as if fragility is praise and not a caution inscription. And this is where hazard begins to seem nearly courteous, because if light equals cultivated, then the objective becomes to diminish colour, diminish flush, diminish sun, diminish circulation in the observable way, even though your physique is still performing its utmost to maintain you animate. You witness ladies select shaded avenues, denser veils, elevated necklines. You witness hand coverings, even in temperate climate. You witness sleeves that maintain the sun off the lower arm, like it is a scandal. It is not merely fashion, it is a tactic. Then the items appear to sustain the tactic. Ointments that guarantee to lighten, dusts to obscure blemishes, preparations to refine and amend any indication that you possess flesh like a creature. Some are comparatively benign by the criteria of the period, manufactured with starches or chalky foundations. Others venture into more concerning chemistry. You observe small containers inscribed with gentle terms like lily and pearl, as if plant-based titles can magically maintain you protected. You attempt not to chuckle, but it is difficult not to, because describing something pearl-illuminating cream sounds like you are about to decorate a cupcake, not apply unknown components onto your features. There is a silent performance between what individuals acknowledge and what they perform. Numerous desire the light appearance, but do not desire to admit they employed anything. So the objective is not merely whiteness, it is believable whiteness, the sort that resembles you were created in a refined salon that generates a peculiar commercial space for discretion. Blush is spread more cautiously, not to contribute conspicuous colour, but to generate the fantasy of a vigorous faintness. You contribute a trace of pink, and then invest the remainder of the day claiming you did not contribute a trace of pink. It is a communal exhibition with a powder implement as the accessory. Your vision settles on a lady's publication exhibited near the register. There are illustrated features that seem eerily comparable, refined, light, calm. The features do not display hesitation. They do not display weariness. They do not display the mortal tendency of experiencing a difficult day. And here is the deceptive segment. When you witness enough of those visuals, your own features begin to seem like a difficulty to address. Not because you disliked it organically, but because somebody marketed you a measuring instrument that was never intended to accommodate any actual physique. An unusual detail slips into your palm in the shape of a chattering saleswoman who inclines in like she's revealing a formula. Not a hazard? She references arsenic consumers as if it is a fashionable gossip, individuals consuming small doses to accomplish a transparent skin tone and luminous vision. The account has the peculiar taste of partial reality and partial legend, which is frequently how hazardous practices circulate. Some records describe individuals employing arsenic in managed quantities for looks, and the accounts circulate because they are exciting. It is the Victorian variation of somebody murmuring, "I discovered this functions," while not precisely stating what this is. The hazard is not solely the material, it is how the gossip makes toxin resemble an appearance mystery. Scholars still debate whether the prevalence of such customs was extensive among fashionable urban ladies, or primarily magnified by dramatic reporting and moralizing leaflets that adore to criticize female self-regard. Either manner, the concept itself becomes powerful, even if solely a fraction performs it. The awareness that somebody might perform it elevates the consequences. The criterion ascends, the weight intensifies. You begin considering, if she can seem that light, why cannot I? And you do not halt to inquire whether "can" is the proper term. You depart the merchant and proceed toward a garden where the vegetation stand like weary protectors, their foliage covered in metropolis particles. You observe a caretaker propelling a carriage, a youthful child wrapped up, features rosy in the chill. The child's pink seems vigorous. On a mature lady, that identical pink might be understood as crude. There is an age and hierarchy filter on every shade of colour. It is not adequate to be vigorous. You must be vigorous in the appropriate visual pitch. Then there is the climate difficulty. Victorian municipalities are moist, and moisture makes everything adhere. Materials adhere, locks adhere, odours adhere. Your physique responds with flush and heat and the awkward mortal requirement to manage temperature. But the standard does not permit observable exertion. You are intended to seem cool and unaffected, like a china statue that never needed to pursue a carriage. You picture the absurdity of it and it nearly becomes amusing again because your physique is literally a furnace with perspectives. And civilization is attempting to act like you are an ornamental dish. So you commence to witness the restraint behind the whiteness. It is not merely makeup. It is timetable. It is prevention. It is remaining interior. It is deliberately restricted exterior duration. It is defensive clothing in periods when you desire to respire. It is selecting fashion over ease so regularly that you begin to neglect ease exists. And that has results. Reduced sun can indicate weaker skeleton and diminished spirits, though Victorians do not present it that manner. They present it as cultivation. They present it as excellence. They present it as a lady's organic fragility, as if fragility is a regulation of nature instead of a communal requirement. You position near the metal barrier of the garden and observe the sun struggle through a mist that makes it resemble a currency at the foundation of filthy liquid. You contemplate how the manufacturing metropolis itself is altering the significance of flesh. In agricultural existence, sun and breeze are standard. In urban existence, the exterior can be residue and hazard. Whiteness becomes a kind of protection, an indication that you have not been deteriorated by the avenue yet. The avenue is everywhere. It penetrates into your respiratory system, your garments, your hands. The criterion requests you to seem unaffected by the precise realm you're obligated to exist in. A gentleman passes and examines your features with the informal privilege of somebody who considers ladies are collective scenery. You oppose the impulse to rotate your vision so intensely they vibrate. Instead, you maintain your expression impartial because impartial is protected, impartial is dignified, impartial is draining. You grasp now that whiteness is not solely a shade, it is a communication. I am sheltered, I am disciplined, I am not accessible for assessment, even though the assessment continues arriving anyway. You continue proceeding, and the gaslights commence to radiate again as the day fades. The light standard drifts through the evening like a phantom that declines to be dismissed. It guarantees advancement, it threatens embarrassment, and it converts something as elementary as sunlight into an adversary you must evade with material, dust, gossip, and silent terror. You move into a garment creator's merchant where the atmosphere is heated with pressed material and the faint scent of metal, like currency and needles, have been disputing all day. Bolts of silk and linen recline against the partition in organised towers, and somewhere beyond a drape, somebody is being assessed with the gravity of a vessel being prepared for ocean. The garment creator examines you the manner a timepiece examines duration, exact, unsentimental, and prepared to make modifications. On a surface rests the object that governs the space, a corset, light and organised with boning that provides it a spine of its possession. It seems nearly harmless when it is not on a physique, like a fancy belt that received advancement. Then you lift it up and sense the mass, the rigidity, the manner it declines to accommodate in your palms. It is not manufactured to accommodate with you. You are manufactured to accommodate with it. A common historical reality. settles silently in the middle of the space. In the Victorian epoch, corsets are extensively utilised among numerous ladies in Europe and North America, influenced by fashion and sustained by an enterprise that manufactures stays and corsetry at magnitude. The outline is not unintentional. The restricted midsection and elevated chest generate a profile that indicates femininity, discipline, and the sort of refinement that indicates you possess duration, wealth, and somebody to assist you secure yourself into position. You navigate beyond the drape, and a servant or a sibling or a companion stands prepared, because securing yourself is feasible but troublesome. A trouble is the adversary of a mechanism that anticipates you to perform this every day. The corset encloses around your torso, solid as a hand clasp you cannot abandon. The bindings suspend like a challenge. You stabilize your palms against the dressing partition, inhale, and the constricting commences. It begins with a pull that seems controllable. We like somebody secure in a decoration. Then the material closes in and your ribs observe. Your respiration becomes a reduced thing. Your bearing alters, whether you consent or not. Your upper back pulls backward, your spine extends, your abdomen flattens into submission. You suddenly grasp why individuals state a corset provides sustenance. It performs. It sustains you the manner a severe educator sustains a classroom, by making it extremely apparent what will occur if you misbehave. Somebody pulls the bindings again. You exhale without intending to, and that exhale is captured by the garment, converted into a reduced you. You attempt to chuckle it off, but the chuckle emerges abbreviated, like your respiratory system have been informed there is a curfew amusement. One appears because your mind desires relief. You comprehend this is the original abdominal exercise, except the corset is performing the effort and your organs are submitting a grievance. The garment creator moves backward to evaluate. She refines the material over your midsection like she is refining a crease in your destiny. She approves with acceptance, and it is peculiar how satisfying that seems. An approval becomes a compensation. A reduced midsection becomes an accomplishment. You do not acquire it with wellness, you acquire it with tolerance. The corset is frequently clarified as a representation of subjugation, and it can be, but it is also entangled up with actual aspirations and practicalities. Some ladies appreciate the configuration it provides, the manner it makes clothing suspend correctly, the manner it compels a particular upright bearing that interprets as assured and cultivated. Others discover it uncomfortable, limiting and draining. Numerous experience both realities at the identical duration. It is not merely an object, it is a daily negotiation between physique and anticipation. Scholars still debate whether corsets are primarily detrimental instruments imposed by patriarchal fashion, or whether they operate as complex implements that some ladies employ willingly, even strategically, to navigate position and personal exhibition. You can sense that debate existing inside the garment itself. It is supportive and penalizing. It is empowering in outline and restricting in respiration. It offers you a function and requires you perform it convincingly. As you navigate, you observe how your physique adapts. Your paces become reduced. You rest more cautiously. You flex less at the midsection and more at the knees, as if you are exhibiting propriety with your articulations. Even consuming becomes a determination. A complete meal seems ambitious. When your middle is compressed, you begin picturing dinner as a competition with a limiting uniform. Amusement, too, slips in. You could present a Victorian feast and describe its small portions solely, and suddenly it is not a trend. It is nature. There are wellness assertions drifting surrounding the corset, and they proceed in every orientation. Some physicians and observers caution that severe securing compresses organs and produces fainting, digestive difficulties or respiration troubles. Others maintain corsets furnish back sustenance and enhance bearing, and some ladies do report sensing maintained together by them, particularly during extended days positioned or performing tasks that burden the back. The confusion is fertile foundation for guidance, and guidance is never complimentary. It arrives with assessment. You rotate sideways in a reflector and observe the outline appear. That dramatic curve that resembles the character S is attempting to become a lifestyle. The configuration is striking. It is also obviously manufactured. You sense your lower ribs pressing inward, and you question what they would communicate if ribs could converse. Probably something unprintable for bedtime listening, so let's maintain it PG and picture they are courteously clearing their passages. An unusual detail surfaces from the work table. A small metal implement employed for constricting and modifying, and nearby a measuring tape inscribed not merely in inches, but with annotations, as if midsection dimension is a journal entry. Some corsets arrive with clasps that permit quicker securing in forward while binding in backward disciplines the final constriction. There is even a subculture of competitive small midsections where the assessment becomes a boast. The concept of severe securing receives disgust in moralizing pitches, as if pulling strings is an indication of ethical weakness. Yet the identical civilization that criticizes the custom also markets the corsets manufactured to make it feasible. It is like marketing desserts and then composing angry editorials about decoration. The garment creator modifies the top border and you become conscious of the manner the corset alters your respiration pattern. Instead of expanding your abdomen, you shift toward elevated chest respiration. The sensation is not instantly dramatic, it is subtly fatiguing. You consume shallower respirations without comprehending, and shallow respiration makes you sense somewhat worried, somewhat lightheaded, somewhat more liable to halt and rest downward. In a peculiar manner, the corset can make you appear more fragile merely by making you physically less capable to surge through space. Fragility becomes a mechanical result. Then the communal communication clicks into position. A small midsection indicates personal restraint. A disciplined physique indicates a disciplined mind. A disciplined mind indicates excellence. It is a ladder of presumptions, and every step is slippery. If you cannot or will not utilize the corset, you hazard being interpreted as negligent. If you utilize it too conspicuously, you hazard being interpreted as self-regarding. The appropriate path is perpetually a restricted one, and you can inform it is restricted because everybody continues tumbling off and receiving assessed for the landing. You rehearse lifting your arms. The corset opposes not completely, but adequately to remind you who is in authority. You rehearse rotating rapidly and sense the garment direct your torso like a steering mechanism. It is straightforward to witness why fainting becomes portion of the Victorian cultural imagination. Not because everybody is collapsing like insects in every salon, but because the circumstances for dizziness are constructed into the outfit, particularly when combined with heat, strain, and restricted food. Had a crowded space and a communal anticipation to remain composed. And suddenly, a faint becomes a socially permissible departure passage. If you cannot communicate, I require to rest downward because this is absurd, you can merely collapse and allow the space transport you. Amusement 3 appears gently. The corset is essentially an extremely costly manner to request personal space, because once it is on, your physique begins issuing courteous announcements like no sudden movements, no bending if preventable, and absolutely no surprise embraces. You proceed out of the merchant and into the avenue, and the metropolis seems different. With the corset on, you consume reduced respirations and observe the rhythm of your own footsteps more distinctly. You sense your bearing lifted, your chest forward, your chin somewhat elevated, and you grasp why. The outline is tempting. It transmits composure, even when you do not sense composed. It converts you into a representation, a preceding statement, a configuration that communicates, I am refined, I am correct, I am maintained together. But your physique is still your physique, and it continues reminding you. Your abdomen presses against the boning when you attempt to inhale deeply. Your ribs sense boxed, your muscles commence to suffer where the weight rests. The hazard is not perpetually instant catastrophe. Frequently, it is the gradual normalization of pain, the steady instruction to disregard signals of burden. When you exist inside that instruction, you cease inquiring whether suffering is required. You begin presuming it is. And that presumption, more than any individual binding or stitch, is what makes an appearance criterion truly hazardous. You slip into a restricted merchant that carries the scent of fragrance, attempting to compete with disinfectant, and neither one is succeeding. The registers are glass, the shelves are packed, and everything arrives in small containers, as if hazard is less hazardous when it is packaged adorably. The assistant greets you with a luminous, rehearsed grin, and a pitch that indicates you're about to become an improved individual through buying determinations. Beyond him, columns of dusts and preparations gleam beneath the gaslight, each one guaranteeing gentleness, cleanliness, youth, and that particular Victorian fantasy of seeming unaffected by existence. You lift up a small container inscribed with a floral title, and it seems oddly substantial for something intended to rest lightly on the flesh. You rotate it open. The dust beyond is delicate and light, like ground china. It disperses into the atmosphere and settles on your fingertips. It carries a faintly chalky, faintly sugary scent, like it is attempting to persuade you it developed in a plantation. Your mind desires to presume it is benign because it seems pure. Victorian appearance items are excellent at that deception. A common historical reality moves into vision with the composed assurance of a grave gentleman in a top covering. Numerous 19th century cosmetics and flesh items are not controlled the manner contemporary buyers anticipate, and components like lead mixtures and arsenic appear in various preparations, occasionally deliberately, occasionally through contamination, occasionally through an enterprise that focuses more about outcomes than hazard. This is not a mystery to everybody, but it is straightforward to disregard because the instant compensation is observable and the damage is frequently postponed. Mortals are famously inadequate at concerning about postponed damage, particularly when the reflector is demanding right now. The assistant offers a skin tone dust intended to refine and lighten. Another container guarantees to diminish blemishes, which are regarded like small offences committed by sunlight. A container maintains to clarify the circulation, which is a phrase that sounds medical adequately to impress your relative and ambiguous adequately to signify absolutely anything. You commence to witness how appearance, wellness, and ethics receive braided into one cord, and you're anticipated to ascend it without examining downward. Lead enters the scene like an ancient villain displaying fragrance. White lead possesses a record in cosmetics that extends backward centuries. Valued because it generates a light, opaque finish. When it rests on the flesh, it can seem beautifully, even like you are a painting. The difficulty is that physiques are not surfaces. Lead can be absorbed, particularly with repeated employment, and chronic contact is connected with grave wellness difficulties. The harsh segment is that initial outcomes might resemble the appearance standard itself: whiteness, weariness, a particular drawn fragility. The item can generate the appearance while silently generating the sickness that reinforces the appearance. It is a personal feeding circle, and the circle is lucrative. You picture the daily practice. Dust in the morning, a trace more before guests, a subtle reapplication before dinner. The features become a task, and the task is never concluded. You clean your fingertips on a material and observe the particles adhering. It is peculiarly persistent, like it desires to remain. That adhesiveness is portion of the attraction. A covering that endures, a finish that maintains, a finish that maintains onto you too. Arsenic appears with a separate sort of threat, because it is both infamous and peculiarly fashionable in gossip. In some items, arsenic mixtures are employed in small amounts to enhance the looks of flesh, occasionally to diminish blemishes, occasionally to generate a light translucence that individuals describe as glowing. There are also accounts of consuming arsenic to enhance skin tone and hunger. accounts that circulate because they are alarming and because they offer a shortcut. Shortcut culture is not recent. It merely displays separate packaging. Now you venture to another shelf and discover blushes, lip colours, and something promoted to make the vision more luminous. The colours are compact but concentrated, like concentrated assurance. You can picture somebody spreading a little to seem energetic, because seeming energetic is anticipated, but seeming excessively energetic is questionable. This is the Victorian balance. Be captivating, but not enticing. Be vigorous, but not sturdy. Be vibrant, but not conspicuous. If this sounds unfeasible, it is because it is. And unfeasible criteria are excellent for transactions. A lady near you requests the assistant for something that will extract the yellow out of her skin tone. The phrase makes your abdomen constrict because you recognise what yellow flesh can signify. Not perpetually, but occasionally it indicates sickness, liver difficulties, the physique struggling. The assistant does not propose rest or medical attention. He proposes an item that is the instant you grasp how cosmetics can become a manner to conceal caution indications. You're not perpetually making yourself more attractive. Occasionally you're making yourself seem less sick, which can postpone assistance, which can intensify damage. Scholars still debate whether the most hazardous cosmetic components are extensively employed by average ladies, or whether the worst situations cluster among those pursuing extreme standards, magnified by dramatic records and ethical crusaders who adore a frightening account about self-regard. Both can be accurate in separate spaces. What matters is that hazardous items exist in the commercial space, and the commercial space is convincing. It offers optimism in a container. It offers fitting in a flask. An unusual detail captures your attention in the shape of arsenic skin tone papers, delicate sheets employed to absorb and illuminate the flesh. Promoted like a portable transformation, they are straightforward to transport, straightforward to employ, and straightforward to conceal, which makes them the perfect companion for an epoch that requires you appear organic while secretly labouring overtime. You can picture somebody sliding a packet into a handbag the manner somebody today slides a phone charger into a bag. Because being unprepared seems like communal termination, you navigate toward the backward where cleansers and locks preparations are exhibited. The cleansers are aggressive, intended to eliminate away the residue of metropolis existence. But aggressive cleanser can irritate the flesh, and irritated flesh encourages more concealment. Then the concealment irritates more. Then you eliminate harder. The sequence rotates. The flesh becomes a combat zone between manufacturing filth and manufacturing answers. There is also a hierarchy angle that alters the danger. Wealthier customers can buy items with improved packaging and perhaps more reliable preparation. Though reliability does not guarantee protection, less wealthy customers might buy cheaper variations that reduce corners, employ fillers, or include unknown materials. Either manner, the features become a buyer location, and the buyer is not provided complete information. You're requested to trust the inscription, trust the assistant, trust the standing of the merchant. Trust is a privilege, and in this environment it can be hazardous. You move outside, and the cold atmosphere contacts your features, which now sense somewhat arid from the dust on your fingertips. You massage them delicately and contemplate how undetectable contact can be. A corset is observable, a limitation you can indicate to. A poisoning dust is silent. It does not declare itself. It does not creak like severe bindings. It does not depart conspicuous traces on day one. That makes it simpler for a civilization to act like the hazard is magnified. It makes it simpler for an individual to continue employing it while informing themselves they are being reasonable. You pass a lamp column plastered with notices. One guarantees a clean lily skin tone in a week. Another guarantees to eliminate blemishes without exertion. Another maintains the elixir will restore youth. The vocabulary is absolute, assured, and a little frantic. You can sense the psychological attachment. If you fail, it is because you did not attempt hard adequately. If you accomplish, you will be compensated with admiration. If you hesitate, you hazard being abandoned by the criterion. You catch yourself reading an advertisement promising no harmful ingredients, which in Victorian language might as well mean no ingredients we're ready to confess to. You picture ingredients gathered around a table, deciding by committee whether they qualify as dangerous, and lead lifts its hand saying, "I'm simply misunderstood." You continue walking and notice a woman whose face looks flawless and pale beneath the gas lamp. The surface appears almost too smooth, as if the light can't locate a single imperfection. You find yourself wondering what she's wearing on her skin. You wonder about the frequency of application. You wonder if her headaches stem from tension or chemical exposure. You wonder if she'd even make the connection. The real danger of these expectations isn't just the product itself. It's how they normalise suffering. A touch of irritation seems like nothing. A bit of lightheadedness gets blamed on nerves. A wave of exhaustion gets labelled as feminine delicacy. The warnings your body sends get reinterpreted as character flaws. Your second laugh comes quietly. The Victorians name it nerves, much like modern people blame everything on stress, except one version might include complementary heavy metal poisoning. You attempt to laugh, but you maintain steady footing because you're starting to understand how daily routines can become slow-motion experiments performed on your own body. You arrive at a quieter street where city sounds fade into distant whispers. You pause and breathe, attempting to draw air into your lungs as though you could rinse away the entire day. The realization arrives simple and disturbing. Beauty preparations are meant to remain on the surface. But in this time period, they don't always respect that boundary. They penetrate, they build up, they persist. The mirror delivers immediate gratification. The body settles the account much later. Your third laugh lands gently as you envision a Victorian woman applying powder with scientific precision, except her laboratory tools consist of a puff and her protective equipment is pure optimism. You angle your face toward the gas lamp and observe your shadow dancing on the wall. There's something oddly soothing about it, how shadows reduce you to basics. No visible pores, no marks, no evidence of human struggle, simply an outline. And you grasp why the fantasy of perfect appearance proves so compelling. It provides escape from examination. It provides agency. It provides the opportunity to receive generous judgment, even when that generosity comes with conditions. But the containers and tins have no interest in kindness. They focus on outcomes. They focus on creating loyal customers. And in the quiet moments between marketing messages and social rules, you recognize the most dangerous element might be how effortlessly a society convinces you to risk your well-being for acceptance, one gentle, perfumed application after another. You enter a bedroom that resembles a set designed for sophistication, the sort of space where even the furniture appears to be maintaining posture. A fire burns in the fireplace, subdued and courteous. A wash basin gleams on the dressing table. Combs and pins rest in orderly lines like instruments arranged for a procedure. Except the subject is your hairstyle. The atmosphere carries traces of pomade, floral essence and heated iron, and you realise hair transcends its basic function here. Hair represents engineering. Hair indicates social standing. Hair is also, unfortunately, highly combustible. You take a seat and someone begins working, a sister, a servant, a companion. With careful movements, your hair gets brushed until it gleams, because shine suggests wellness, and wellness suggests moral character, and moral character suggests you're the kind of woman who would never engage in anything scandalous like having flaws. Then it gets collected, wound, elevated and secured into a formation that makes your head feel suddenly weighted, as though you've balanced a small cushion atop your skull. Victorian fashion favours elevation and fullness. It also favours the pretense that you simply woke up like this. calm and flawless, without a single pin piercing your scalp. Like a small act of betrayal, an established historical truth settles into the moment. Victorian hairstyling frequently requires elaborate construction, including buns, plaits, coils, and the addition of hairpieces, with grooming practices supported by commercial items like pomades, oils, and hair solutions. Hair serves as a visible symbol of femininity and social respectability, and the labour involved becomes part of the theatre of appearing well-maintained. The implements arrive next. Warmed tongs sit near the fire, heating until they reach the temperature needed to convince hair into curves and ripples. You sense the heat before contact, like an acknowledgement that nobody's officially making. The tongs grip and release, and the scent of warmed hair rises, faintly toasted, faintly concerning. Your first laugh arrives because your mind needs a rescue. You're essentially being lightly cooked like an elegant hors d'oeuvre, and the objective is to appear effortless afterwards. Then the preparations. Some are designed to enhance shine, some to maintain placement, some to control frizz, some to calm the scalp. A small application becomes a sheen, and sheen transforms into glamour, and glamour transforms into a daily requirement. The difficulty is that numerous hair products are oil-based, and oil adores flame the way scandal adores a parlour. In a residence illuminated by candles, oil lamps, and open fires, your hairstyle is occasionally one wayward spark from becoming a crisis. You shift your head slightly and a pin scratches your scalp. It's a minor sting, and it serves as a reminder that the hairstyle is maintained through pressure and penetration. Victorian hairpins aren't always the delicate little modern versions. Some are substantial, lengthy, and sharp enough to cause genuine harm if inserted incorrectly or during a fall. It's not typical dinner table discussion, but it's part of the danger. The more complex the hair, the more hardware involved, the more opportunities for injury. A peculiar detail emerges in the form of hair rats, which sounds like an infestation problem, but actually refers to a padding device, often constructed from stuffed hair used to create volume beneath the hairstyle. It can be fashioned from your own gathered hair, from brushes, or bought ready-made. The concept is both ingenious and slightly unsettling. In a fairy tale sort of way, you're wearing additional hair to make your existing hair appear more abundant. It's the Victorian version of a hidden extension, except it's sometimes literally your own shed strands reborn as a fashionable enhancement. The padding performs its function and your hairstyle becomes taller, fuller, more refined. You examine the mirror and observe the profile society desires. The face appears smaller when the hair appears magnificent. The neck appears longer. The entire presentation is managed, intentional, but you also register the heaviness, the strain at the roots, the pulling that makes your scalp feel like it's been asked to support a weighted bag without handles. Constant tension creates consequences. Some women develop hair thinning or breakage from continuous pulling and restrictive styles, particularly around the hairline. The Victorians may not label it the way contemporary dermatology does, but they notice. They describe it as fragile hair, dropping hair, nervous hair. The market responds with solutions and remedies, many aggressively promoted and not consistently safe or effective. The body issues a warning, and the commercial world sells you an answer. You rise and move toward the window, mindful of your balance because the hairstyle shifts somewhat when you move and you don't want a pin to come loose. That's another concealed price. A hairstyle can dictate how you conduct yourself. You move more carefully, not because you're inherently fragile, but because you're maintaining a construction. Fragility becomes performance. A fire crackles, a small, sharp sound, and your focus snaps toward the flame. Reflexively, you step backward. You can imagine the catastrophic scenario. Hair saturated with oil, a curl positioned too near a candle, a sleeve grazing a lamp. Household accidents are an unfortunate truth in homes lit by open flame, and hair can transform a minor error into a catastrophe. The danger extends beyond the flame itself to the everyday acceptance of flame, adjacent to fabrics, adjacent to curtains, adjacent to lace, adjacent to hair. The entire setting is a prolonged challenge. Historians continue debating whether dramatic stories about women's hair igniting are excessively emphasized as cautionary tales about vanity, or whether they represent a genuinely substantial household threat that people simply accept as part of daily existence. In reality, both forces can coexist. Accidents occur. Stories gain embellishment. The anxiety still influences conduct. It influences what people caution you about. It influences what products advertise as prevention. A servant presents you with a small cap to wear overnight, designed to preserve the style and prevent oils from marking linens. The cap is lightweight and functional, and you can almost sense your scalp exhaling with relief at the prospect of not being pinned for several hours. Yet even rest isn't liberated from beauty demands. You're expected to safeguard the hairstyle because reconstructing it consumes time, and time represents money, and money is what sustains the entire operation. Then arrives another danger quieter than fire. The heated tongs, applied too frequently or too intensely, can singe hair, burn skin, and create marks along the hairline or ears. A minor burn is simple to conceal under hair, which means it's simple to overlook. The overlooking becomes hazardous when small injuries are treated as normal. More substantial injuries become simpler to disregard until they demand attention. Your second laugh enters as you picture a Victorian instruction guide for hair tongs. Step 1. Heat metal near open flame. Step 2. Press hot metal near your face. Step 3. Act shocked when consequences arrive. The humour is mild, but the danger is genuine. You spot a small bottle on the vanity labelled as a restorative hair solution. It claims to strengthen roots and maintain glossiness. The fragrance is sharp, nearly medicinal. Many solutions contain alcohol, plant extracts, and occasionally more questionable components. The boundary between grooming and chemical contact blurs once more. Hair products can irritate the scalp, trigger dermatitis, or be inhaled. In a space with poor ventilation, the beauty ritual becomes not just a visual endeavour but a sensory atmosphere you inhabit. A caller knocks. The servant smooths your hair one more time and inspects for loose pins. The completed appearance is refined. Your head feels like it's wearing armour constructed from sophistication. You enter the parlour and the space is filled with candles, each one a small sun that could turn against you. You maintain careful distance. You offer polite smiles. You don't lean too near. You don't laugh too vigorously. Your body remains vigilant, and the vigilance is draining. Your third laugh arrives softly. You realise your hairstyle has converted you into a human candelabra safety auditor, examining every flame like it's personally indebted to you. The evening progresses, and you notice how hair operates as social communication. A well-constructed style indicates leisure, assistance, cleanliness, and femininity. It broadcasts that you are assembled, literally, but the price is continuous maintenance, continuous products, continuous danger. The most dangerous aspect isn't that every woman's hair catches fire. It's that the potential exists, and the setting makes it believable. And the expectations still demand oils, elevation, and elaborate arrangements that amplify the threat. Later, you return to the bedroom and sit once more, methodically removing pins, strand by strand. Each pin withdrawn is a small liberation. The scalp eases, the head feels lighter. You massage your temples and discover tender areas where tension has resided all day. The mirror presents you with a softer version of yourself, hair falling more organically, face less constructed. It feels authentic. It also feels hazardous, because authenticity isn't always valued in a culture that prizes polish. You regard the candle on the vanity and extinguish it, watching the smoke spiral upward like a quiet caution. In the darkness, you can still detect the oil in your hair, still sense the residual heat from the tongs, still feel the invisible regulations that made you sit a particular way and move a particular way. Beauty has become a daily discipline, and the discipline has dangers embedded in the instruments. And as you settle into bed, you comprehend that danger can be attractive when it's normalized. And that's precisely what makes it so difficult to reject. You enter a dimly lit drawing room where the drapes are pulled, despite the fact that daylight outside remains active. The illumination is selected, arranged and softened because unfiltered daylight is truthful in a manner Victorian society considers impolite. On a small table rests a hand mirror, a porcelain plate, and a tiny bottle with a label inscribed in refined script. The bottle appears innocent, like a fragrance trial. It isn't fragrance, it's an eye preparation, and it's about to question how much you prize looking pure. A woman opposite you angles her face toward the light and blinks slowly, purposefully, as though she's rehearsing being observed. Her eyes seem wide, dark and luminous, the sort of gaze that makes people characterize you as soulful rather than simply conscious. You grasp the attraction instantly. Large, brilliant eyes communicate youth. They communicate gentleness. They communicate a type of vulnerability that society confuses with virtue. If your eyes appear large and glossy, people presume you're tender. They also presume you're manageable. That's not praise. That's a snare with eyelashes. An established historical truth moves into position in portions of 19th century Europe, including among stylish circles. Some women employ belladonna-based drops to expand the pupils, pursuing a wide-eyed appearance connected with beauty. Belladonna derives from a plant, and its designation itself contains the seduction, beautiful woman, as though language is attempting to charm you into disregarding pharmacology. You collect the bottle and the glass is cool. Clear liquids are always questionable when they guarantee transformation. You remove the cap and the subtle scent is herbal, nearly sweet, like a garden concealing it's also a poison repository. A small drop awaits. You pause. The room is silent enough that you can register your own swallowing. Then, because this is how social influence operates, you imagine the option. Imagine your eyes appearing unremarkable. Imagine someone describing you as tired. Imagine someone implying you look startled, harsh, or stern. Imagine being informed you look older than your years. The bottle transforms into a threat. Conversely, it provides you protection against criticism. A drop enters. It's cold, then stings, then makes your eye water, as though your body is attempting to expel it. Your pupil starts to expand, and the light in the room transforms. It feels brighter, sharper, less merciful. Your vision becomes sensitive, and you squint, which is paradoxical because the entire purpose was to appear open and wide. Your first laugh arrives quietly. You desired larger eyes, and you received the emotional sensation of staring into a flashlight. You examine the mirror. The pupil is expanded. The eye seems darker and deeper. The result is undeniable. It grants your gaze a dramatic gentleness, the type that poets would over-romanticize and strangers would misread. But your body remains unimpressed. Your eye feels parched around the perimeter. The light hurts. Your focus feels somewhat compromised, as though the room has shifted a fraction away from you. Belladonna can obscure near vision and make bright light uncomfortable. It can also prove dangerous in elevated doses, producing symptoms that extend far beyond cosmetic inconvenience. The boundary between beauty and medical danger is not a boundary, it's a blur. The strangest element is how rapidly the room responds. Someone smiles at you with approval. Someone declares you look lovely. Someone employs that terrible word, sweet, as though your eyes are a confection. The praise strikes you like warm tea. You despise that it feels pleasant. You despise that the reward materializes instantly, while the damage lurks in slower, less obvious ways. That's how hazardous beauty practices endure. They compensate you quickly. Historians continue debating whether belladonna, employed for cosmetic pupil expansion, is standard practice or more a fashionable peculiarity exaggerated by subsequent retellings and moral cautions. The ambiguity doesn't eliminate the importance. Even the notion that women might endanger their vision to satisfy an ideal reveals how intense the pressure becomes. A standard doesn't require universality to wield influence. It only requires admiration. You place the bottle down and observe other eye techniques scattered around the space. Dark powders to emphasize lashes, subtle shading to make the eyes appear larger, methods to lighten brows and soften the face. Some are comparatively safe. Some involve questionable pigments, even when the components aren't overtly poisonous. The routine can irritate the eyes, particularly with unclean applicators and dusty settings. Victorian cities aren't sterile and the eye is delicate. A minor infection can escalate in an era without modern antibiotics. A peculiar detail floats in through dialogue. Someone mentions that a particular appearance is achieved by applying a tiny amount of irritant, so the eyes water somewhat, producing a natural gleam. It sounds ridiculous, but it aligns with the reasoning. If a glossy eye appears romantic, then the market will provide a method to manufacture gloss. Tears become an enhancement. The body's responses become styling. Your eyes continue adjusting. You blink more frequently. The room's periphery seems softer, not in a pleasant way, but in a mildly disturbing way, like your sight is covered by a thin veil. You move toward the window, and the daylight strikes harder than anticipated. You retreat quickly, heart accelerating faster, not from exertion, but from that small warning the body transmits when it dislikes what's occurring. You can also sense something else. The social requirement that you remain composed. You cannot grasp your eyes dramatically. That would be attention-seeking. So you do what Victorians do. You minimize. You declare, "Oh, it's nothing," while your pupils continue to absorb light, as though they're thirsty for disaster. Laugh. 2 enters as you realize the drops have made you appear permanently impressed by everyone. A man states something dull and your eyes communicate, "Wow. Truly remarkable." "Sir, please elaborate," while your mind silently pleads for darkness. You sit again, and someone presents you with a fan. The fan becomes a multi-purpose instrument, cooling you and protecting your face from the light. The movement creates a personal shadow. It's not merely flirtation, it's adaptation. Much of Victorian flirtation is adaptation. Much of grace is discomfort transformed into art. You notice how the beauty standard for eyes connects to morality. Again, wide eyes suggest innocence. Innocence suggests purity. Purity suggests value. The sequence is absurd, but it's socially operational. If you can appear innocent, you receive gentler treatment. That can matter in family discussions, courtship, employment, and daily respect. So the pursuit isn't merely about vanity, it's about navigating power with the instruments you're permitted. The difficulty is that those instruments are risky. Belladonna isn't a playful plant. It contains atropine-like compounds that influence the nervous system. Even without becoming gruesome in detail, you can detect the seriousness in how your body reacts. Dry mouth can develop. Rapid heartbeat can develop. Confusion can develop. The body is communicating this isn't designed for casual application. Yet the bottle sits on the table like a beauty accessory, normalized by its packaging and by the gentle social conversation surrounding it. Historians continue debating whether the cosmetic application of such drops is primarily an elite fashion culture product, or whether it spreads into wider society through imitation and the aspiration to climb socially. The answer matters less in this moment than the sensation in your eyes. You experience the danger personally, and the danger doesn't care what class you belong to. Chemistry isn't polite. Your third laugh arrives gently as you think. If you require a botanical neurotoxin to appear sweet, perhaps the standard is the problem, not your face. It's the type of thought that feels rebellious, although it should be self-evident. As the afternoon diminishes, the drops wear off gradually. Your eyes begin to feel more like your own. The light becomes bearable again. The room stops shimmering at the periphery. You breathe more comfortably, and you recognize you were maintaining tension in your forehead the entire time, as though your face was attempting to protect your eyes with pure willpower. You examine the mirror once more, and your pupils are nearer to normal. The dramatic depth has vanished. Your gaze appears ordinary, human, alert. It's not less beautiful, it's simply less theatrical. Yet you can already anticipate how people will characterize it. Plain, tired, severe. The language is a weapon that tempts you to reach for the bottle again. You don't. You secure it tightly and set it aside. The tiny bottle remains there, refined and quiet, like a secret that desires to be shared. And you comprehend how dangerous beauty standards become when the standard compensates the illusion of innocence so powerfully that people are willing to endanger their senses to accomplish it. Your eyes aren't just organs in this world, they're a communication. And too frequently, the communication is valued more than the communicator. You discover yourself in a bright little pharmacy that smells like cloves, alcohol, and the sharp bite of something designed to sanitize. A bell chimes as you enter, and the clerk glances up with the serene confidence of a man who considers teeth a moral matter. On the counter are containers of tooth powder, bottles of mouthwash, little brushes, and several ominous tools that appear like they belong in a toolbox rather than a mouth. The Victorians appreciate a clean smile, but their route to it can be harsh and occasionally chemically questionable. You lean nearer to a mirror positioned near the shelf and examine your own teeth under the gaslight. The light makes enamel appear duller, and the shadows emphasize every minor stain. In this period, a bright smile communicates health, youth, and proper breeding. A poor smile can be interpreted as neglect. That interpretation isn't fair, but it's influential. Dental difficulties are widespread. Diets are transforming with increased sugar availability, and professional dentistry is advancing, but not uniformly accessible. People still desire the appearance, though, and desiring the appearance establishes a market for shortcuts. An established historical truth arrives into view with the steady weight of a record. The 19th century witnesses major transformations in dentistry, including the increasing professionalization of dentists and the broader application of new materials and methods. But dental care remains inconsistent and frequently painful, and many people depend on home remedies and commercial tooth powders. Toothache is a normal suffering. Extraction can be widespread, and beauty once more attempts to conceal what life inflicts on the body. You select a tin of tooth powder and twist it open. The powder is white and gritty. You rub it between your fingers and it feels abrasive, like fine sand. Many tooth powders depend on abrasives to scrub stains away, and some are so harsh that they can erode enamel down over time. You can envision the routine. Scrub vigorously, feel clean, repeat daily. Gradually scrape away the protective layer that makes teeth durable. It's the type of solution that functions immediately and extracts payment later. Victorian beauty practices favour that pattern. The clerk recommends a product that claims to restore natural whiteness. You nearly laugh because the phrase natural keeps appearing. Like a guest who refuses to depart. Your first laugh arrives. If this many things require restoration, perhaps nature is attempting to resign from the position. On another shelf, you notice bottles of mouthwash with powerful smells. Many contain alcohol and antiseptic components designed to freshen breath. Breath is a social concern in crowded cities where diets, illness, and limited dental care can make unpleasant breath widespread. But breath is also judged morally. If your breath is unpleasant, it can be interpreted as a sign of poor character rather than biology. The solution isn't always better health. The solution is to smell like something stronger than your difficulties. A woman nearby requests something to stop her gums from bleeding. The clerk proposes a rinse and a powder, and you feel a slight chill. Bleeding gums can indicate irritation, infection, or nutritional deficiencies. A rinse might comfort temporarily, but it doesn't always address the origin. Again, cosmetics and hygiene products become cover-ups. You conceal symptoms so you can continue functioning because society values functioning more than healing. You glance at a small pamphlet providing advice on dental care. It encourages brushing, rinsing, and avoiding certain foods, but it also promotes products. The advice is never impartial. It's a funnel, and the funnel directs to substances you're not fully informed about. A peculiar detail sits in a corner of the display. Tooth powders and cleaning products occasionally contain strange components by modern standards, including charcoal, chalk, and even more alarming additives in certain preparations. Some historical records mention the application of acids to whiten teeth quickly, which can damage enamel. Others mention powders with strong abrasives that scrape away stains along with the tooth itself. The fixation with whiteness can drive people toward methods that make teeth appear better today and worse permanently. You also observe the social dimension of the smile. In polite settings, people are required to maintain expressions controlled. Smiling too broadly can be perceived as improper or overly familiar. So teeth are both significant and not meant to be displayed too much. This generates another strange tension. You are pressured to maintain perfect teeth, even if you only reveal them in carefully measured moments. It's like maintaining a grand piano that you are permitted to play only softly in private. While everyone still evaluates the sound, historians continue debating whether Victorian concerns about dental appearance are motivated more by genuine health awareness or by class performance, the aspiration to signal refinement. In an era when industrial diets and urban existence strain the body, you can sense both currents. Some people genuinely desire relief from pain and infection. Others desire a smile that corresponds with the polished image expected in respectable circles. Often, it's the same person desiring both. Then you notice the dentist's sign outside and your stomach constricts with anticipation. You enter and the room is cleaner than the streets, but not exactly reassuring. The chair appears sturdy and somewhat threatening, as though it has witnessed too many screams and chosen to remain quiet about it. Instruments are arranged on a tray, gleaming. The dentist welcomes you with professional cheerfulness, and you immediately distrust his cheerfulness, because nobody who handles teeth should be that pleased. He requests you to open your mouth. You comply, and you feel strangely exposed. Much of Victorian dentistry involves extraction because preserving teeth isn't always achievable. Fillings exist, but techniques and materials vary. Pain management exists, but it's not universal. Some dentists employ ether or nitrous oxide in certain settings, but access and practice differ, and many people still endure procedures with minimal relief. The anxiety of dentistry becomes a cultural presence. And anxiety doesn't encourage careful preventative visits. It encourages avoidance until pain compels you in. That cycle makes smiles worse, which increases shame, which increases the desire for whitening and concealment products. Another cycle. Your second laugh arrives as you eye the instruments and think. This is the only salon where the before and after includes a possibility you lose something significant. You maintain your humour gentle, but your jaw muscles tighten anyway. The dentist examines a molar and frowns. He discusses decay. Sugar is more available in this era, and sweets become more widespread across classes, particularly in urban settings. Teeth bear the cost. He proposes an extraction for a tooth that is causing difficulty. You imagine the gap in your smile, how it will alter your face, how people will interpret it in some circles. Missing teeth can be concealed with dentures, but dentures themselves can be uncomfortable and imperfect. In other circles, people simply exist with gaps and are criticised for them. Beauty standards don't consider why your tooth is missing. They only consider that it's missing. You select a less extreme treatment if available and depart with a recommendation for powders and rinses. Outside, the cold air feels like mercy. You breathe and taste the mouth rinse, persisting on your tongue, sharp and chemical. You wonder how many people rinse and scrub their mouths raw, attempting to maintain an ideal smile in an environment that constantly undermines it. Your third laugh enters as you imagine a Victorian mouth rinse advertisement, guaranteed fresh breath with the unspoken footnote, because it burns away your capacity to smell anything. You walk past a confectioner's shop with sugar sculptures in the window, gleaming like edible treasures. The temptation is everywhere, and so is the criticism. A person can be reprimanded for indulging and then reprimanded for experiencing the consequences of indulgence. The standard is a trap that punishes you for being human and then markets you something to conceal it. You arrive at a quiet corner and touch your teeth with your tongue, suddenly appreciative for everyone that is intact. The anxiety you experience is not only about pain, it's about the social significance attached to your mouth. Teeth are part of beauty, part of speech, part of eating, part of smiling, part of existence. When a culture connects them to character, it transforms dental health into a moral performance. That performance motivates people to harsh powders, aggressive scrubbing, strong rinses and risky quick solutions, all in the pursuit of appearing clean and refined. You continue walking, jaw relaxed now, but the awareness remains. In the Victorian world, even your breath can be policed, and even your smile can become dangerous when the instruments to perfect it are as rough as the judgment that demands it. You sit at a small breakfast table where the china appears delicate enough to crack from disappointment. A boiled egg cools untouched, toast sits like a suggestion rather than a plan, and tea steams in a cup that smells faintly of tannin and restraint. Someone has positioned a pamphlet beside your plate, the type printed on thin paper with bold confidence. It guarantees a reformed figure and a calmer constitution, as though your body is a misbehaving tenant. And this pamphlet is the eviction notice. An established historical truth settles into the room with quiet authority. Victorian society witnesses a booming market for patent medicines and tonics, distributed widely through advertisements and travelling sellers, frequently with vague assertions about improving health, nerves, digestion and complexion. Many of these products are not tightly regulated, and consumers are encouraged to self-medicate for everything from fatigue to weight changes. When you combine that marketplace with a beauty ideal that values slimness, delicacy and controlled appetite, you create a perfect storm of people attempting to manage their bodies with bottles and regulations. You lift the pamphlet and scan it. The language is moral, not medical. It discusses excess and purity, about discipline and temptation. It treats eating like a character examination. The implied message is straightforward. If you are larger than the ideal, you have failed not at biology, not at circumstance, but at virtue. That is the emotional knife that makes dangerous diets feel like repentance. You look around the room and notice how food itself is wrapped in performance. In polite company, you are required to eat neatly, modestly, and not too enthusiastically. Hunger is permitted, but only in a socially acceptable volume. Appetite must be controlled, like laughter, present, but not loud. So dieting slips into the culture smoothly. It can be presented as refinement, as self-discipline, as the characteristic of someone too civilized to chew with enthusiasm. Then arrive the tonics, small bottles with labels that imply science, even when the contents are mostly alcohol, sugar, herbs, and whatever else the manufacturer believes will sell. A slimming tonic might claim to restore proper digestion, which sounds harmless, until you realize it frequently means it will make your body purge sweat or rush to the chamber pot repeatedly. If the scale changes, the product is celebrated. Nobody questions whether you're simply dehydrated, malnourished, or exhausted. The mirror smiles, the body sighs. The salesman counts coins. Your first laugh arrives as you imagine the Victorian definition of restored digestion being, congratulations, you have been sprinting to the toilet with spiritual dedication. You walk later that day through a shopping street and observe the advertisements. They're everywhere. Posted on walls, printed in papers, inserted into magazines. They display silhouettes with tiny waists and captions about health and elegance. They imply that you can become the correct shape with the correct purchase. The boundary between dieting and consumerism dissolves. Restraint becomes a commodity. Even self-denial arrives with a price tag. You enter a chemist's shop and notice the shelves devoted to female complaints, nervous troubles, stoutness, and weakness. The categories overlap in messy ways, as though the body is a collection of symptoms that can be rearranged to match whatever product requires selling. The clerk proposes a tonic for languor, then another for bloating, then another for constipation. It's a cascade. One bottle creates a problem, the next bottle promises to repair it, and the entire chain is justified as self-care. A woman nearby requests something to reduce down her figure. The clerk provides a powder and lowers his voice as though thinness is a secret society. You hear words like cleansing, reducing, correcting the body is treated like an error. That framing makes people tolerate harsh methods. If you believe your body is incorrect, discomfort becomes evidence you are fixing it. A peculiar detail slips into the conversation like an unpleasant rumour dressed as a shortcut. Tapeworm whispers, stories circulate about people using parasites as a method to lose weight, the notion being that the worm consumes part of what you eat. The tale has that terrible mix of curiosity and horror that makes it spread. Whether it's common practice or more legend than reality, the mere existence of the rumour reveals something significant. People are willing to imagine allowing a creature to exist inside them if it means becoming smaller. That's not just vanity, that's desperation shaped by social judgment. Historians continue debating whether extreme weight loss practices in the Victorian era are widespread behaviours, or whether they are amplified by sensational journalism, moral reformers, and later retellings that favour a shocking example. The debate matters, but the pressure is undeniable. Even without the most extreme acts, ordinary restriction and tonic application can be harmful, particularly for young women expected to appear frail while also functioning through long days of chores, visits, and emotional labour. You depart the shop with a small bottle in your pocket, not because you fully trust it, but because you sense the pull of possibility. The label promises calm nerves and a more regular appetite. Regular is such a loaded term. It sounds reasonable, it sounds safe, it sounds like you're simply becoming normal when really you're aligning yourself with an ideal that keeps shifting. At home, you pour a dose into a spoon. The liquid is amber and smells like strong herbs soaked in spirits. You swallow and feel warmth bloom in your throat. Many tonics contain significant alcohol, which can generate an immediate sensation of relief or energy. That sensation can be confused with health. You feel steadier for a moment, lighter in mood, less anxious. Then later the heaviness returns and the bottle becomes a habit, a nightly ritual framed as medicine but functioning like an escape. Your second laugh arrives softly as you realise the tonic is basically calm down juice, except the calm is rented, not owned, and the landlord is chemistry. Food becomes complicated. You begin to think in regulations. Eat less at breakfast, skip lunch if you can, have tea instead of supper. The regulations are praised by certain voices, the ones that treat self-denial like a hymn. But the body resists. You become dizzy, you become cold, you become irritable, then guilty for being irritable because women are expected to be pleasant even when hungry. You lie in bed at night and your stomach growls, and you attempt to treat the sound as a moral failing rather than a biological alarm. Then there's the social performance. At dinners, you sit at a table with rich food and richer expectations. You take small portions, chew slowly and smile politely when someone urges you to eat more. If you refuse too openly, you seem ungrateful or strange. If you accept too eagerly, you seem uncontrolled. The correct choice is to appear as though you're barely hungry, as though your body operates on decorum and air. It's exhausting to pretend you are not human. You notice how the language of dieting bleeds into the language of illness. Delicate gets praised, fragile gets romanticized. Someone compliments your thinner appearance, and you cannot tell if they are admiring your willpower or witnessing your deterioration. In an age obsessed with disease, it is darkly strange that signs of sickness can register as attractive. The celebration of frailty makes it difficult to recognize when your body is genuinely suffering. You walk through a marketplace and smell fresh bread, ripe fruit, roasted meat. Your body answers with honest hunger, direct and uncomplicated. Your mind answers with dread of criticism, tangled and oppressive. You purchase something modest, then experience guilt, then anger at the guilt, then guilt about the anger. The ideal does not merely shape your physical form, it invades your thinking. Joke 3 slides in as you picture your stomach and your etiquette manual in a courtroom. And the etiquette manual keeps raising objections while your stomach attempts to submit evidence like Exhibit A. You require nourishment. The hazards of Victorian dieting are not always theatrical, but they build up. Restriction can enfeeble you. Purging remedies can dehydrate you. Laxative routines can wreck digestion. Alcoholic medications can foster addiction, and the entire culture of self-correction trains you to doubt your own bodily signals. Hunger transforms into something to outwit. Exhaustion transforms into something to hide. Lightheadedness transforms into something to write off as delicate feminine nerves. You stand beside a window watching people go by, each individual negotiating privately with food and flesh and expectation. The city offers you remedies, and the remedies frequently generate fresh troubles. You consider how the perfect figure is never described as powerful. It gets described as slender, delicate, refined. The vocabulary itself guides you away from strength. You set down the tonic bottle and examine your hands. They are actual. They shake faintly when you have consumed too little. They stabilize when you feed yourself properly. The body communicates plainly if you allow it. The hazard is that society conditions you not to hear it. It conditions you to listen to advertisements, to salespeople, to flattery, to humiliation. It conditions you to regard yourself like an assignment instead of a human being. Outside, the streetlights illuminate and the billboards keep offering metamorphosis. Inside, your stomach settles when you finally eat something truly satisfying. The comfort is straightforward, almost gentle, and you understand that the most revolutionary choice in this setting might be selecting sustenance over acceptance, even when acceptance is what everyone insists you should survive on. You enter a cramped washroom hidden behind a proper house where the atmosphere is chilly and carries the faint scent of soap that has overcompensated. A porcelain basin rests on a timber stand, a jug of water alongside it, and a modest collection of cloths folded with the sort of exactness that indicates cleanliness is theatre, not merely routine. Outside, the city buzzes with wagons and footfalls. Inside, everything grows quieter, as if the space is restraining its breath to escape being charged with filth. Cleanliness in this environment is not simply about ease. It is a social declaration. It is a moral assertion. If you smell fresh, you are presumed to be organised. If you appear clean, you are presumed to be decent. The difficulty is that the surroundings make genuine cleanliness challenging. Water availability differs by residence and economic standing. Indoor plumbing is not everywhere. Streets overflow with people. Ash and grime land on skin and cloth illness spreads. Yet the expectation stays unwavering. And when circumstances cannot satisfy an unwavering expectation, individuals turn to alternatives. A mainstream historical fact comes into view. The Victorian period witnesses expanding public fascination with sanitation, hygiene and cleanliness, influenced by urbanisation, epidemics and reform campaigns. But daily bathing customs and access to fresh water fluctuate dramatically, and numerous people depend on spot washing and clean undergarments rather than complete immersion bathing. Cleanliness becomes connected to respectability in profound ways, even when the actual resources are inconsistent. You dip a cloth into the basin and clean your face and throat. The water is frigid and leaves your skin faintly flushed, which is frustrating because you are attempting to appear composed, not recently scrubbed, like an infant. You apply some soap, and the soap is abrasive, the sort that makes your skin feel unnaturally tight, which is not a normal sensation, and honestly sounds like your body is breaking down. The harshness stems partly from soap compositions being potent, and partly from the battle against filth being constant. When the environment is dirty, people scrub more aggressively. Scrubbing more aggressively can damage skin. Damaged skin then requires powders, lotions, and concealment. The pattern starts over. On the shelf sits a compact bottle of perfume. It is refined, with an ornamental label and a cap that resembles a miniature gem. Perfume in this period is not merely about pleasant fragrance. It can serve as disguise. When the streets reek of horse waste, smoke, and packed humanity, scent becomes a method to obscure the surroundings. Yet concealment can also hide danger signals. If someone is sick, the odour of illness or infection might get covered with fragrance. If garments are not entirely clean, fragrance can fake it. The expectation demands you seem fresh, and perfume becomes a performer hired to fulfill the part. You uncork the bottle and detect a rush of floral sweetness. Underneath it is alcohol and something more intense, like spice. You touch a bit on your wrist and it expands in the heat of your skin. For an instant you feel more assured. Then you recognise how rapidly that assurance relies on not smelling like the urban environment. The anxiety of being viewed as dirty lurks under the fragrance like a shadow joke. One slides in as you consider. If perfume could resolve social difficulties, the streets would be covered with lavender and nobody would ever disagree again. You walk into a passage where linens are being ventilated. Sheets and undergarments hang beside a window, capturing whatever clean atmosphere can be located. Fresh linen is a primary cleanliness tactic because switching undergarments and washing visible grime can create the appearance of cleanliness. Even when complete bathing is not regular, it is sensible. It is also part of the act. The pristine white of linen becomes an emblem. White fabric is a display. It marks easily, which means maintaining it white suggests exertion, water availability, and time for washing. It also suggests you do not perform the sort of labour that stains white fabric immediately. You step outside, and the street odour strikes you again, dense and layered. You comprehend why scent becomes a conflict zone. Women transport smelling salts and perfume containers. Some keep little pouches of dried plants in pockets and compartments. Scented soaps are treasured. Even hair products are perfumed. The objective is to generate an atmosphere of cleanliness that can accompany you like an invisible shield. A quirky detail emerges in a small establishment that sells vinaigrettes, miniature decorative vessels, holding a fragment of sponge saturated in vinegar or scented fluid, intended to be inhaled quietly to counter disagreeable smells or weakness. They are both functional and dramatic, like adornment, that also serves as psychological reinforcement. You can envision someone raising it to their nose in a packed space, eyes widening somewhat, as if they are reacting to sensitive nerves rather than the very actual smell of too many bodies in insufficient room. Historians still debate whether Victorian fixation with cleanliness is chiefly motivated by developing medical comprehension of disease transmission or by moral and class enforcement. The notion that the clean are virtuous and the dirty are questionable. The reality is complicated. Public health transformations advance sanitation improvements, and people do start to associate filth with sickness, even if germ theory is not widely grasped initially. Simultaneously, cleanliness is employed to evaluate character and class. A destitute person can be criticised for being dirty, even when their housing renders cleanliness nearly unachievable. A prosperous person can declare purity while profiting from labour that maintains their hands spotless. You enter a public bathhouse space in your mind, the variety that exists in certain cities as reforms advance. providing bathing accommodations to those without individual tubs. The concept is both compassionate and uncomfortable. Bathing in public demands time, funds, and readiness to be observed. For numerous people, it is not a daily possibility. For others, it is essential. Still, the social discussion does not always recognize these practical constraints. It simply declares, "Be clean," and abandons you to determine how. You return to the residence and witness the ceremonies of grooming. Hands are cleansed frequently. Faces are cleaned. Hair is brushed for extended periods, partially to clean it by spreading oils and eliminating dust. Clothing is aired and shaken shoes are buffed. These practices can assist and they can be reassuring. They also reinforce the notion that a woman must perpetually maintain herself. Maintenance becomes a moral obligation. Then there is the concealed dread, the one nobody wishes to mention aloud at the supper table: disease. Victorian cities suffer outbreaks of diseases like cholera and typhoid, and terror of contagion influences conduct. People become worried about miasmas, contaminated air, repulsive smells. Scent and cleanliness become associated with security. If something smells foul, it is assumed to be hazardous. That is not consistently correct, but it is persuasive. It makes people pursue fragrance, as if fragrance is defense. Joke 2 arrives softly as you picture someone waging war on germs with a perfume sprayer like "Take that, invisible foes." You will be conquered by rose water. You observe how this fixation turns internal. If the city is filthy, you attempt to construct a clean barrier around yourself. You scrub your flesh. You perfume your garments, you scent your storage, you dust powders. But some of those powders and fragrances can irritate skin and airways. Powerful scents in confined spaces can trigger headaches. Harsh soaps can split skin. Split skin can become contaminated. The effort to remain clean can produce fresh weaknesses, particularly when the products are intense and airflow is restricted. You walk into a parlour where visitors sit near together, fabric touching fabric, breath mingling in the atmosphere. Someone coughs into a handkerchief. Someone else acts oblivious, then discreetly applies perfume at the neck. You witness the social coordination. The cough is recognised only through scent. The unease is handled through manners. People continue conversing as if nothing is occurring because confessing vulnerability is perilous. In a culture that connects health with moral value, a woman praises another's fragrance and labels it fresh. Fresh is cipher. Fresh means clean. Fresh means secure. Fresh means respectable. The praise is a comfort not merely about smell, but about inclusion. You start to comprehend why people grip scent rituals. They are not simply cosmetic, they are social protection. Historians still debate about the degree to which Victorian cleanliness culture genuinely enhances health results versus generating anxiety and humiliation that unfairly target women. You can sense the gendered pressure in the requirements. Women are frequently assigned with sustaining the household's cleanliness and the family's respectability. If a youngster appears dirty, fault falls on the mother. If a dwelling smells musty, fault falls on the woman. If a husband's collar appears grimy, fault falls on the wife. Cleanliness is work, and the work is moralised. Joke 3 slides in as you envision a Victorian checklist titled "How to be Respectable." And item number 1 is evidently "Do not smell like you physically exist." You stand beside the basin again and examine your reflection. Your cheeks are scrubbed, your hair brushed, your garments tidy. You appear clean, or at minimum you appear like someone who has attempted to be. The city beyond will reverse some of that. Within moments some soot will land, a smell will attach, a sleeve will graze against a moist wall. The world keeps imposing itself onto you, and you keep attempting to stay refined. That perpetual exertion is part of the hazard when cleanliness becomes a moral standard. It transforms everyday circumstances into sources of humiliation. It promotes excessive use of abrasive products. It promotes concealing instead of confronting health problems. It promotes the notion that if you merely smell correct, you will be evaluated favourably, even when evaluation is anticipating you regardless. You rinse your hands and observe the water dim slightly as it spirals away. The sight is modest and strangely calming, like you have eliminated something concrete, but the pressure stays abstract. The obligation to be immaculate in a grimy world, the requirement to be fresh in stagnant air, the demand to be pure while inhabiting a city that never ceases generating filth. You dry your hands, methodically fold the cloth and step back into the chamber, scented with perfume and aspiration, carrying the invisible weight of being evaluated by what the world deposits on you. You sit at a compact table where a polished magazine rests open like a secret entrance. The paper feels sleek beneath your fingertips, and the ink smells vaguely metallic, like the future materializing in printed format. On the page, a fashion illustration depicts a woman who appears impossibly collected. Her waist is minuscule, and her hair is flawless. Her dress drapes in crisp lines, and her expression implies she has never been startled by an invoice. Around her are descriptions detailing the cut of the sleeve, the arrangement of trim, the proper glove length, the accurate shade of bonnet ribbon. It is not merely information, it is direction, and it is conveyed with the authority of holy text. A mainstream historical fact grounds the scene. Victorian print culture flourishes dramatically with illustrated magazines, newspapers and fashion illustrations, distributing trends and standards to an expanding audience, helping normalize what fashionable appears like across locations. The image becomes an instructor, and the instructor never grows weary. It repeats the instruction every week, every month, in every sitting room where someone turns a page and questions if they compare favorably. You trace the outline of the illustrated figure and experience a peculiar combination of appreciation and annoyance. Appreciation because it is beautiful in a neat, regulated way. Annoyance because it is not an authentic body. It is a drawn commitment. It does not perspire. It does not swell. It does not grow weary. It does not have that one sock that consistently vanishes in the laundry. It simply exists to be perfect, and the instant you compare yourself to it, you are already failing. The copycat mechanism starts with modest actions. You notice a sleeve design and decide your next dress should incorporate it. You notice a hairstyle and request someone to duplicate it. You notice a posture and rehearse it in the mirror. Then the action becomes wider. You begin to accept that the illustration represents ordinary. The magazine does not state, "This is fantasy." It states, "This is fashion." And fashion carries a silent menace. If you do not comply, you will appear outdated. Outdated becomes unfeminine. Unfeminine becomes unrespectable. The sequence is absurd, but it is socially operational, which means it persists. You hear the rustle of pages as someone nearby flips rapidly through a stack, eyes surveying like a shopper evaluating prices. The tempo is rapid. Hungry fashion illustrations generate longing by displaying what you do not possess yet. And because they distribute widely, they generate the anxiety that everyone else is already achieving it correctly, even if nobody is. You feel like they are joke. One arrives as you picture the fashion illustration artist sketching an elbow and thinking, yes, this elbow definitely belongs to a woman who has never transported groceries. You examine closer and realize the images are frequently supported by text that presents taste as morality. The magazine commends modesty, but the clothes it displays are still engineered to shape the body and attract the eye in a regulated way. The magazine commends simplicity, but the outfits frequently demand expensive fabric, exact tailoring, and meticulous maintenance. The magazine commends natural beauty, but it still offers tips that suggest constant correction. The contradiction is not accidental. Contradiction maintains you purchasing. If the objective is unattainable, the market remains active. The magazine also generates a standardized ideal that can eliminate local diversity. A woman in a smaller community can now witness what women in a major city are allegedly wearing. She can feel obsolete. She can strain her household finances. She can strain her own body to correspond with the silhouette. The standard travels quicker than comfort, quicker than safety, quicker than rational thinking. A quirky detail surfaces from the edges of the magazine. Advertisements for pattern frameworks and mail-order merchandise that guarantee you can accomplish fashionable appearances at home. Some frameworks claim to streamline dressmaking, providing measurements and templates that allow you to reproduce a high society silhouette without high society finances. It sounds liberating, and in certain ways it is, but it also means the ideal penetrates deeper into daily existence. The direction does not halt at the boutique. It enters kitchens and bedrooms where women stitch late into the night, pursuing the perfect line with exhausted eyes and aching fingers. Historians still debate whether mass fashion media primarily democratizes style by granting more people access to trends, or whether it primarily amplifies body policing by distributing a narrow ideal more extensively. You can sense both influences in your hands as you hold the magazine. It offers imagination and ambition. It also offers nervousness and sameness. You watch a mother display a fashion illustration to her daughter indicating the trim and the waistline. The daughter nods, wide-eyed, absorbing the instruction that appearing correct is a capability she must acquire early. The mother's tone is tender, but the pressure is genuine. She is teaching her child how to be protected in society's observation. It is not always cruelty. Sometimes it is affection expressed through warning. Then comes the social cascade. Women assemble and examine the latest illustration. They contrast who has embraced which element. They remark on who appears old-fashioned. Those remarks can be harsh, but they can also be offhand, which is sometimes worse. Offhand evaluation is harder to combat because it seems normal. It seems like climate. You cannot dispute with climate, you just prepare for it. You stand and walk to a dressmaker's establishment where the window exhibits garments based on current trends. The mannequins are configured to hold the clothes appropriately, and the clothes are configured to hold the body appropriately. Your eye is attracted to the waistline first because the silhouette requires it. A dress that does not taper at the waist appears incorrect according to the magazine's reasoning. The magazine instructs your vision what to emphasize, and then your vision turns on you. Joke 2 slides in as you consider. The magazine is fundamentally a miniature supervisor living on paper, informing you your waistline has deadlines. Inside the establishment, the dressmaker references printed illustrations as if they are commandments. She proposes modifications to correspond with the fashionable line. She modifies a bodice to position just so you can witness the production sequence. Artist sketches, ideal printer, distributes, ideal shop, reproduces, ideal customer purchases, ideal body adapts to ideal. The sequence is seamless. It is productive. It is also unforgiving. You notice that the magazine does not display labour. It displays completed outcomes. It does not display the corset fastening, the securing, the scrubbing, the applying, the discomfort. It does not display a woman sitting drained with painful ribs. It displays a woman standing upright, serene, perfect. That exclusion is influential. If you never witness the labour, you presume it is natural. If you presume it is natural, you presume your own exertion is proof of inadequacy. Then there are the products promoted around the complexion enhancers, hair tonics, slimming aids, scent sachets. The magazine does not simply describe fashion. It markets the complete system necessary to approximate the image. It is a marketplace masked as culture. Historians still debate about the extent to which fashion media propels consumer culture versus simply mirroring existing preferences. Among elites, the relationship is cyclical. The elite shape the images shape the public, and the public's focus shapes what gets printed subsequently. You are caught in the cycle. As a reader, you believe you are selecting, but the selections are being arranged. A third joke arrives as you picture the magazine itself murmuring at night from the table like a possessed object, instructing you to acquire a new bonnet or risk social destruction. By Tuesday, you close the magazine and experience a peculiar relief, as if shutting the cover has shut out evaluation. But the images persist. They linger in your consciousness when you dress. They determine what you regard flattering. They determine what you regard appropriate. They determine what you regard achievable. The hazard of the copycat mechanism is that it alters your internal navigation. It makes you believe your body is incorrect when it fails to correspond with a drawing. You step back into the street and witness a range of women, each with different shapes, different ages, different existences. For an instant, the diversity of actual bodies feels stabilizing. Then you notice how many of them display the same silhouette regardless, drawn toward the standardized line. The impact of the page is apparent in the street itself. A boy vends papers on the corner announcing headlines. The city is full of news, full of transformation, full of contradiction. Yet the fashion illustration offers a variety of steadiness, a collective ideal that people can grasp. Steadiness feels reassuring when the world is turbulent. That is why the standard is influential. It offers regulation in an unregulated world. You continue walking and the magazine's instruction continues to resonate in the way shop windows exhibit bodies, in the way women examine each other's sleeves, in the way you become conscious of your own posture. Print has converted beauty into a distributed instruction guide. The pages circulate, the ideal circulates, and with it circulates the pressure to adapt, not merely for vanity, but for acceptance. You step into a morning that begins too early, the variety that tastes like cold tea and duty. The street is already active because work does not pause for your beauty routine to conclude. A woman in a simple dress transports a basket with both hands, moving rapidly enough to maintain pace with the city. A woman in superior clothes moves slower, not because she is inactive, but because her outfit requires it. You watch them traverse the same street and recognize the same beauty standard impacts differently, depending on whose hands are already damaged from labor. A mainstream historical fact sits under everything like a substantial floorboard. Victorian society is intensely divided by class, and the variety of work you perform shapes your body in observable ways, while social requirements use those observable signs to assess respectability. Wealth and class affect access to clean water, time for grooming, quality clothing, medical care, and the capacity to escape sun and soot. The body becomes a record. It documents your hours, your tasks, your exposure, your fatigue. Then, society interprets that record as if it is a moral evaluation. You walk past a line of shops and witness two different versions of well-kept exhibited in glass. In one window, gloves, parasols, and fragile shoes indicate a life where hands are intended for holding a fan, not cleaning a floor. In another, solid boots and rough aprons signal a life where survival comes first. The cruel deception is that the respectable ideal is frequently modelled on the body least affected by labour, then employed. To evaluate the body most burdened by is like commending someone for staying dry while standing under a shelter, then reprimanding someone else for being wet in the rain. You enter a small laundry yard where steam ascends from tubs, converting the air into a hot, moist blanket. Women bend and lift and scrub, arms moving in repetitive power. Their cheeks are flushed from heat and exertion, their hair is secured back for practicality, their hands are red and raw from soap and water. In a different context, flushed cheeks might be labelled healthy. Here, flush is labelled common. The same pigment in the skin is commended or condemned, depending on who displays it and where. You notice how the beauty standard penalises working bodies in particular ways. Rough hands are proof, sun-darkened skin is proof, a rigid posture from long hours is proof. Even smell becomes proof, because certain work brings certain odours that do not vanish easily. Yet the very same society that requires working women to maintain homes, factories and markets operating still expects them to seem neat, modest and agreeable. The requirement becomes impossible, and when it becomes impossible, humiliation becomes the default joke. One slides in as you watch someone scrub a shirt until their arms shake and consider, yes, let us all agree. This is the glamorous lifestyle the fashion illustrations forgot to sketch. You move toward a factory district where the air becomes thicker, the buildings tower, windows smudged, and the street noise transforms from conversation to the steady rhythm of machinery. Workers flow in, faces determined, clothing practical. If you are a woman working here, you are expected to preserve modesty while performing labour that requires movement, sweat, and resilience. The standard desires you delicate, the job demands you strong, the conflict is not abstract, it is in your muscles by midday. Then there are domestic servants, the invisible foundation of respectable households. You step into a hallway where the public rooms are polished and silent, while the back rooms are active and hot. A maid transports water, manages fires, scrubs floors, launders linens, and somehow is expected to appear inconspicuous while performing it. Her uniform might be clean, but her day is not gentle. She's expected to maintain her employer's beauty standards operating. She launders the white fabric that represents purity. She cleans the mirrors that display the ideal. She irons the clothes that create the silhouette. She assists lace corsets and secure hair and sustain the performance. The household's elegance is constructed on her labour, yet her own body will display the price. A quirky detail surfaces in the way people discuss hands. In certain circles, a lady's hands are expected to appear soft and pale, and women may sleep in gloves or use creams and protect hands to maintain that softness. Meanwhile, working women use basic protections like wrapped cloth or homemade salves when they can, but the work destroys softness anyway. Hands become a class indicator, so direct that someone can observe your fingers and determine what variety of life you inhabit. The body is regarded like evidence in a trial you never consented to participate in. Historians still debate whether Victorian beauty standards function mostly as top-down regulations imposed by elites, or as a more intricate negotiation where working and middle-class women actively adjust and reshape ideals to accommodate their circumstances. You can witness the adjustment in modest actions. A working woman might secure her hair neatly, not for fashion, but for safety and cleanliness, and still experience pride in it. She might maintain her dress repaired and her collar clean as a method to claim dignity. These are not the same impulses as a society lady collecting new ribbons, but the outward indications can coincide, which makes the whole system perplexing. Pride and pressure combine. You walk through a market and witness how class alters what is regarded pretty. In some communities, a healthy robustness can be respected because it signals capability. In others, robustness is regarded as unfeminine. The language transforms depending on who is speaking. A shopkeeper might commend a customer's good colour because it suggests health. A gossiping neighbour might label that same colour coarse because it suggests work. Beauty becomes less about reality and more about who has the authority to define reality. Joke 2 arrives as you picture a Victorian committee assigning interpretations to cheeks. Rosy equals charming if you possess a parlour, but questionable if you possess a washboard. You pause near a seamstress's entrance and hear the miniature, steady sound of stitching inside. A woman sits hunched over fabric in dim light, working extended hours for minimal pay. Her posture is curved, her eyes strained. She might be manufacturing garments that assist other women appear fashionable while her own body endures the price in back pain and fatigue. There is a silent cruelty in that. The beauty system is a mechanism, and some people are inside it as both labourers and targets. Class also determines risk. A wealthier woman might employ dangerous cosmetics because she can purchase them and because her social environment demands perfection. A poorer woman might employ dangerous products because she cannot purchase safer alternatives, or because she requires to appear respectable for employment, or because she is informed her natural features will restrict her opportunities. The motivations vary, but the vulnerability is mutual. The standard does not consider why you comply. It only compensates the outcome. You watch a young woman applying a little powder in a shop reflection. Quick and cautious, her hands move like she is stealing time. It is not vanity in a trivial sense. It is tactics. If she appears fresh, she may be regarded better at work, or protected from certain insults, or granted a miniature portion of respect. Appearance can affect wages, opportunities, even safety. When appearance affects survival, beauty becomes critical. Then you notice the double trap. If a working woman employs too much makeup, she risks being evaluated as improper. If she employs none, she risks being evaluated as careless. If she dresses neatly, she might be accused of aspiring beyond her station. If she dresses plainly, she might be overlooked. The standard is not a ladder anyone can ascend. It is a fence that keeps relocating. Joke 3 slides in as you envision the fence on wheels, rolling away the instant you believe you are close, while someone courteously suggests you should attempt harder. You stand near a doorway where a foreman is hiring, and you witness women line up, adjusting collars, smoothing hair, attempting to present themselves as capable and respectable. Simultaneously, the body becomes evidence. Evidence you are disciplined. Evidence you will not generate trouble. Evidence you are clean enough, composed enough, modest enough. It is unjust, but it is genuine in how people behave. The hiring observation is not merely evaluating skill, it is evaluating conformity. You walk away with the uncomfortable comprehension that Victorian beauty standards are not equally hazardous for everyone. For the wealthy, hazard can originate from extreme measures undertaken to preserve an ideal. For the poor, hazard can originate from the pressure to appear respectable without the resources to accomplish so safely, and from the evaluation that follows if you fail. Both are forms of harm. One is wrapped in lace, the other is wrapped in necessity. As the day diminishes, you pass a window where a well-dressed woman examines herself, adjusting a glove, correcting a curl. Across the street, a working woman cleans her hands on her apron and continues going. Both are being observed, both are being evaluated. The difference is that one has a cushion of resources and the other has to expend her body like currency. You continue walking, and the city continues sorting people by appearance as if skin, hands and posture are precise maps of value. The most hazardous part is how ordinary it all appears. When a culture regards the body as evidence of character, it instructs everyone to become investigators and suspects simultaneously. You sense the weight of that suspicion in your own shoulders, and you recognize that in this world, beauty is not merely an appearance. It is a social system that deposits fingerprints on everyone, particularly those with the least authority, to erase them away. You sit in a high-backed chair in a room that smells faintly of ink, camphor, and authority. The wallpaper is elaborate, the curtains are substantial, and the silence has that particular Victorian quality that implies the furniture itself expects proper posture. A man in a dark coat, crisp collar and assured expression opens a notebook and examines you like you are both patient and riddle. He does not inquire what you desire to appear like. He inquires what you should be. The difference is delicate, and it transforms everything. A mainstream historical fact settles in with the weight of a medical textbook. During the Victorian period, medicine professionalizes rapidly, with doctors acquiring cultural authority and publishing guidance widely, including direction aimed specifically at women's bodies and conduct. Many medical theories of the time present women as naturally delicate, susceptible to nervous disorders and defined by reproductive functions, which determines how society interprets female health, beauty, and emotion. When a doctor speaks, people listen, not consistently because he's accurate, but because he's wearing the era's stamp of legitimacy. He inquires about your appetite, your sleep, your spirits, your monthly cycles, your skin, your headaches, your faintness, your mood. The questions cascade out as if your entire existence is one extended symptom catalogue. You attempt to respond honestly, but you notice how readily your words get converted into categories. Tired becomes nervous, irritable becomes hysterical, hungry becomes uncontrolled, pale becomes refined, unless it becomes alarming, in which case it becomes weak. The same characteristic can be commended or diagnosed depending on the tone of the space. He recommends rest and moderation. Moderation sounds benevolent until you recognize it can mean remaining indoors, avoiding exertion, avoiding excitement, avoiding ambition, avoiding anything that might make you occupy space. He proposes that too much study can strain you, that too much emotion can unbalance you, that too much anything can disturb your constitution. You hear the message beneath the medicine: remain manageable. Joke 1 arrives softly as you picture a Victorian ideal dose chart for women that includes 2 teaspoons of fresh air and 1 small opinion per day, taken only under supervision. He gestures toward a pamphlet on the desk, a popular guidance booklet written in a tone that combines concern with control. It instructs you how to sit, how to breathe, how to lace, how to eat, how to sleep, how to preserve a calm expression, how to avoid strong passions. It offers directions as if they are health requirements. The language is full of should, the most draining word in the English language when it is directed at your ribs. You're sitting in a consultation room that smells like lavender and something chemical underneath, waiting for a man in a pressed suit to tell you what your body should look like. He doesn't ask how you feel. He measures, he observes, he declares. The scale is not a question, it's a verdict. His recommendations come packaged as medical wisdom, but they carry the weight of social law. Eat less, move delicately, maintain composure. Your health and your reputation are treated as the same project. If you gain weight, you're careless. If you lose it, you're disciplined. The language of care becomes the language of control, and you're supposed to be grateful for the guidance. You notice how his voice never wavers, as if uncertainty would undermine his authority. He speaks about the female constitution like it's a delicate machine prone to breakdowns, requiring constant supervision. Rest is prescribed, but so is restriction. You should walk, but not too far. You should eat, but not too much. You should think, but not too hard. The advice adds up to a life lived at half volume. In drawing rooms across the city, women pass around the same advice columns, underlining passages like they're studying for an exam. The columns promise clarity. Do this, avoid that, and you will be safe. Safe from judgment, safe from gossip, safe from being called unfeminine. But the safety is conditional. It only works if you stay small. A quirky detail emerges when you read about the booming industry of beauty tonics and elixirs, bottles filled with substances nobody fully understands, marketed with testimonials from women who swear their complexion improved, their energy returned, their spirits lifted. Some of these mixtures contain alcohol, opiates, or worse. The danger is invisible until it isn't. Women trust the labels because distrust feels like rebellion, and rebellion is exhausting when you're already managing 1,000 other rules. The physician folds his hands and warns you about vanity, as if caring about your appearance is a moral failing, but then he also warns you about neglect, as if not caring is equally shameful. You're trapped between 2 accusations. You cannot win. You can only adjust your performance and hope the audience is merciful today. Joke 1 slips in quietly as you imagine the doctor handing you a prescription that just says, "Suffer elegantly," and then charging you for the visit. You leave his office and walk into a world where beauty advice doesn't stay in medical journals. It spreads through household guides, etiquette manuals, lectures at community halls. It becomes common sense. If everyone repeats the same idea, it starts to sound like truth. Tight lacing shapes the waist. Pale skin signals purity. Delicate features suggest refinement. The repetition builds a kind of architecture in your mind, and soon you're measuring yourself against standards you never agreed to. Historians still argue whether Victorian beauty culture is driven by genuine concern for women's well-being or by a need to control female bodies and limit female power. The answer is probably both, tangled together so tightly that separating them feels impossible. Some advice is useful, some is harmful, most is both, depending on who's following it and why. You pass a bookshop and see a new title in the window, something about rational dress and health reform. The cover is plain, almost defiant in its lack of decoration. Inside, the author argues that fashion should serve the body, not the other way around. The idea is simple, but it feels revolutionary because simplicity is treated as radical when everyone else is committed to complexity. The book talks about corsets like they're instruments of torture, which make some readers nod in recognition and others bristle in defence. Corsets are complicated. For some women they provide support and structure. For others they're a source of pain, restricted breathing and long-term damage to internal organs. The debate is fierce because people don't like admitting that something so normal might be harmful. You attend a lecture where a reformer stands in front of a skeptical audience and explains why heavy skirts and tight bodices make movement difficult. She demonstrates by bending, reaching, stretching, actions that look almost absurd in her restrictive clothing. Then she changes into a reformed outfit, looser and lighter, and repeats the same movements with ease. The contrast is undeniable, but half the room still looks uncomfortable, as if witnessing freedom is somehow improper. A mainstream historical fact anchors the moment. During the latter half of the 19th century, dress reform movements gained traction in both America and Britain, challenging the notion that women must sacrifice comfort for respectability. Reformers link tight clothing to health problems and advocate for garments that allow freer movement and better breathing. The movement faces ridicule, resistance, and outright hostility, but it plants seeds that eventually shift how women dress. Joke 2 arrives as you picture a Victorian gentleman panicking because a woman wore comfortable shoes, as if ankle support might topple the entire social order. You walk through the city and notice women dressed in varying degrees of conformity. Some are laced so tightly their breathing is audible. Others have loosened their stays just enough to move without pain. A few wear reform-style clothing, shorter skirts and divided garments that allow them to walk, climb and work without fighting their own outfits. The variety suggests that change is happening, even if it's uneven and contested. In a cafe, you overhear two women debating whether reform dress is practical or scandalous. One insists it's liberating. The other worries it's unfeminine. The word unfeminine is thrown around like an accusation, as if femininity is a fixed set of rules rather than a performance that changes depending on who's watching and what they want to see. The resistance to dress reform isn't just about aesthetics, it's about power. Clothing marks class, gender and respectability. If women start dressing for comfort and mobility, they might start moving through the world differently. They might take up more space. They might demand more access. That possibility terrifies people who benefit from the current arrangement. You visit a shop where the clerk dismisses reform clothing as a fad, something that will pass once women come to their senses. But you notice that even traditional fashion is shifting slightly. Waistlines are adjusting. Fabrics are getting lighter. Skirts are becoming marginally shorter. Change doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just happens quietly, one small adjustment at a time. A quirky tidbit surfaces when you read about women who secretly wear reform undergarments beneath traditional outer clothing, a kind of compromise that lets them breathe while maintaining appearances. It's a survival strategy. You conform where you must and rebel where you can. Historians still argue whether dress reform movements directly influence mainstream fashion or whether broader social changes, like women entering the workforce and participating in sports, force clothing to adapt. Probably both. Ideology opens the conversation, but practicality forces the change. You can't ride a bicycle in a heavy skirt without modifying something, and once women start cycling, the skirts have to negotiate with reality. You stand in your room and hold a corset in your hands, feeling the weight of it, the stiffness of the boning, the tightness it demands. Then you set it aside and choose a looser bodice instead. The relief is immediate. Your ribs expand. Your breath deepens. Your body feels less like a sculpture and more like a living thing. The danger of beauty standards isn't that they exist. The danger is that they masquerade as inevitability. They present themselves as natural, necessary, and neutral when they're actually constructed, enforced, and profitable. Once you see the construction, you can question it. Once you question it, you can refuse parts of it. Not all at once, not without cost, but bit by bit. You walk to a theatre district where the air shifts, becoming warmer, louder, more electric. Posters plaster the walls, promising drama, comedy, romance, scandal. The faces on the posters are bold, expressive, unapologetically visible. This is a different kind of beauty, one that doesn't apologize for being seen. Inside the theatre, the audience settles into their seats and the lights dim. The actress steps onto the stage and the room inhales collectively. Her face is painted, her eyes are lined, her lips are coloured. This isn't the invisible natural look that respectable magazines recommend. This is beauty that announces itself, beauty that knows it's being watched and uses that attention deliberately. A mainstream historical fact settles into the scene. In Victorian society, actresses occupy a contradictory position. They're admired for their talent and beauty, but they're also morally suspect because they perform in public, blur the boundaries of respectability, and earn their own money. The theatre is both celebrated and condemned, a space where women can have power and visibility, but only at the cost of their reputations. You watch the actress move across the stage, commanding the room with her presence. The audience is mesmerized. They lean forward, they gasp, they applaud. But you also hear the whispers, the quiet judgments that follow the admiration. She's beautiful, yes, but she's also questionable. She's talented, yes, but she's also improper. The double standard is so embedded that people don't even notice they're applying it. Joke 1 slips in as you realize the logic is basically, please captivate us completely, but also remain morally pure while doing it, and definitely don't acknowledge that you have any power over us. After the performance, you drift into a supper club where the lighting is soft and the conversation is sharp. You see women who aren't on stage but still command attention, courtesans and high-profile mistresses whose beauty is their currency. They're expensively dressed, impeccably groomed, visibly luxurious. They move through the room like they own it, because in some ways they do. Attention is power, and they've learned how to collect it. But the cost is high. These women are admired and despised in equal measure. Men praise their elegance while calling them immoral. Women envy their freedom while judging their choices. They're both the fantasy and the cautionary tale, symbols of what happens when women step outside approved roles. A quirky tidbit emerges when you learn that some courtesans commission custom perfumes, signature scents so distinctive that people recognize them before they even enter a room. The perfume isn't just a pleasant smell, it's branding, it's memory. It's a way to be unforgettable in a society that insists women should be modest and forgettable. Historians still argue whether Victorian society's moral panic around actresses and courtesans is rooted in genuine religious values or in anxiety about women who control their own image, earn their own money, and influence powerful men. The answer is probably both. Morality is the language, but control is the motivation. You sit at a table and listen to a man praise an actress's beauty in one breath and dismiss her respectability in the next. The contradiction doesn't seem to bother him. He wants to admire her and condemn her simultaneously, and somehow that makes perfect sense to him. The hypocrisy is so casual, it's almost impressive. Joke 2 arrives as you watch him criticize a woman's lifestyle with his words while clearly funding it with his wallet. The danger tied to actresses and courtesans isn't just personal, it's cultural. These women become lightning rods for society's anxieties about female sexuality, independence, and visibility. Their beauty is framed as dangerous because it suggests power, and power in the hands of women is treated as a threat. The punishment they face, social exclusion, moral condemnation, public scrutiny, serves as a warning to other women. Don't be too visible, don't be too bold, don't take up too much space. Yet the culture can't stop consuming their image. Photographs and engravings of famous actresses circulate widely, collected and displayed like trading cards. Their hairstyles are copied. Their fashion choices inspire trends. Respectable women borrow their glamour while refusing them respect. The mainstream imitates in softened forms, then insists it's nothing like those women. You notice how beauty standards sharpen around these figures. Actresses and courtesans are expected to be more dramatic, more polished, more extreme than respectable ladies. That expectation pushes cosmetics, fashion, and body modification into bolder territory. Heavier makeup, tighter corsets, more elaborate hairstyles, stronger perfumes. Glamour becomes a professional requirement and a survival tactic, because in their world attention is literally currency. The social punishment for being too made up remains real for everyone else. A respectable woman can be accused of vulgarity for the same cosmetic choices that make an actress captivating. Context becomes everything. The same red lip can be daring or disgraceful depending on who wears it and where. That's the injustice of double standards. It's not about the action, it's about the label assigned to the person. In a quieter corner, you overhear a young woman dreaming about the stage. Her friend warns her that the theatre ruins reputations. The warning is delivered as concern, but it functions as a threat. You can be admired, but only in approved ways. You can be beautiful, but only with plausible deniability. You can be ambitious, but only until someone decides your ambition is inconvenient. You watch an actress enter the room after her performance, still glowing with stage energy. Some people smile warmly. Others look away quickly, as if prolonged eye contact might contaminate them. She walks like she's used to it, shoulders back, expression calm. It takes strength to be seen this much, to be admired and judged simultaneously, to know your existence is a moral debate at every dinner party. Joke 3 slips in as you think. Imagine being so famous. Your very presence inspires philosophical arguments, and nobody even compensates you for the emotional labour of being their thought experiment. The dangers aren't only physical, though physical risks are real when glamour is maintained with heavy products, restrictive clothing, late nights, and constant scrutiny. The deeper danger is cultural. Actresses and courtesans concentrate the era's anxieties about female power and visibility. Their beauty is framed as dangerous, and then that danger is punished. The punishment teaches other women a lesson. Stay small, stay quiet. Don't look like you know how attractive you are. Yet the culture also can't resist them. Their confidence becomes something people secretly crave. Their glamour becomes a template. The result is a society that demands women be alluring but not openly so, stylish but not showy, captivating but not powerful. That contradiction makes beauty standards more dangerous because it forces constant self-monitoring. You're not only managing your appearance, you're managing what your appearance implies about your character, your morals, your worthiness. You leave the supper club and step into the cool night. The theatre lights glow behind you, and the street feels like a corridor between worlds. Every window reflects a version of what's admired and what's condemned, and the line between them is so thin you could trip over it. You walk home slowly, aware that the most dangerous standards aren't about powder or corsets or stage makeup. They're about permission. Who's allowed to be beautiful openly, and who must hide the effort, hide the desire, hide the ambition, hide the self. You stand in front of a mirror that doesn't have wavy Victorian glass, but it still plays the same trick. It turns your face into a question, and your mind supplies a second reflection on top, the imagined version of you that would be more acceptable, more admired, more effortless, more safe. A mainstream historical fact settles quietly into your thoughts. Victorian consumer culture accelerates mass advertising and branded beauty products, pushing ideals through print and commerce in ways that establish modern marketing patterns. The technology changes, but the logic remains recognizable. A standard is presented as normal, a flaw is identified, a product is offered, the product becomes a ritual, the ritual becomes identity. You take a slow breath and notice how modern vocabulary echoes Victorian moral language without admitting it. Clean beauty, detox, glow, wellness. The words sound healthful, even innocent, but they can still carry judgment. If you don't glow, you're failing. If you don't look rested, people ask if you're taking care of yourself, which sometimes means, are you making yourself pleasant to look at? The moral framework remains, just dressed in softer fabric. You scroll through images in your mind like flipping through an endless magazine. Faces smoothed by filters, bodies posed into impossible angles, skin lit until it looks otherworldly. The old Victorian demand hides inside new tools. Look natural, but not too real. Look effortless, but work constantly. Be desirable, but don't admit you want to be. If you admit it, you risk judgment. If you deny it, you risk feeling isolated in the effort. Joke 1 arrives gently, as you imagine the beauty ideal holding a clipboard and saying, "Excellent work, now please maintain this forever without aging, sweating, or having a single off day." You think about safety, because one genuine difference is that modern regulation and medical knowledge have reduced some blatant hazards. Most people aren't casually applying lead-based powders or swallowing mystery tonics sold by confident strangers. Yet risk hasn't vanished, it's shifted. Now danger often appears as overuse, obsession, invasive procedures, extreme restriction, or the quiet mental burden of constant comparison. The body is less likely to be poisoned by a product, but the mind can be bruised by the standard itself. You notice how the Victorian obsession with class has transformed into something that still functions like class hierarchy, even if it wears different labels. Time is still a luxury. Rest is still a luxury. Access to skincare, dental care, fitness spaces, nutritious food, and medical treatment remains uneven. Even the ability to look natural can be expensive because natural has become a curated aesthetic with its own shopping list. The ideal still rewards those with resources, then pretends the reward is earned through virtue. A quirky tidbit floats into awareness from the late 19th century. Victorians experiment with beauty devices that use electricity, vibration, and mechanical massage, marketed to invigorate skin and nerves. Effectiveness is questionable. Safety is uncertain. But the pitch is familiar. A gadget will fix you. You'll feel improved. You'll become more acceptable. Swap the hand crank device for a modern LED mask or microcurrent tool, and the emotional promise remains identical. Control yourself into being lovable. Historians still argue whether modern beauty culture is a direct inheritance from Victorian moralized respectability or a repeating human pattern that resurfaces whenever media and markets grow powerful enough to monetize insecurity. Either way, the old themes keep resurfacing: purity, discipline, the right kind of femininity, the idea that looking a certain way proves you have your life together. You shift your gaze from the mirror to your own eyes, trying to see yourself without the extra layer of judgment. It's difficult because the gaze you fear isn't only external. It's the internal audience that has absorbed all the rules. The Victorians teach a culture to treat the body as a public statement. Modern culture continues the habit, sometimes more gently, sometimes more aggressively, almost always more constantly. You consider how wellness can become a new corset, not a garment, but a schedule. Macros, steps, sleep tracking, skincare routines with 10 steps that expand to 20. When you're anxious, structure can feel comforting, but comfort turns dangerous when structure becomes punishment. The line between care and control blurs so quickly you don't notice until you're exhausted. Joke 2 slips in as you picture your phone congratulating you for drinking water while completely ignoring the fact that you've been emotionally dehydrated all week. You think about how beauty and morality still tangle together. People say someone is letting themselves go, as if you're a balloon someone forgot to tie down. Weight loss gets complimented before anyone asks why it happened. A bare face is called brave or lazy depending on the observer's mood. The judgment changes its costume, but it still arrives uninvited. The danger isn't that anyone wants to be admired. The danger is that admiration becomes conditional, and you start negotiating with your own body to earn it. You monitor not just your appearance, but what your appearance suggests about your worthiness, your discipline, your value. You walk through a bright store in your imagination, shelves lined with products promising transformation. You recognize the old Victorian sales pitch hiding in modern fonts. This cream will make you younger. This powder will make you flawless. This supplement will make you smaller. This procedure will make you symmetrical. The promises are smoother now, more science-flavored, but the core message can still be cruel. You're not enough yet. Then you notice something else, something like a small light switching on. The Victorian era also demonstrates that standards aren't fixed. They change. They're invented, argued over, resisted. That means they're not destiny. If a standard is constructed, it can be deconstructed. If a standard demands pain, it can be questioned. If a standard makes you smaller in spirit, it can be refused. Joke 3 arrives softly, as you imagine beauty standards as a dramatic Victorian figure clutching pearls, and you calmly responding, "No thank you, I'll be keeping my breath and my peace." You look at your reflection again and try a different metric. Instead of asking whether you match an ideal, you ask whether you look like someone who's allowed to exist without apology. You relax your jaw. You soften your shoulders. You let your face be a face, not a project. The mirror doesn't change, but the feeling does. It becomes less like a courtroom and more like a window. You step away from the mirror and sense how the body carries memory, not just personal, but cultural. Generations of advice, judgment, praise, shame, some loud, some quiet. All of it can be interrupted by a simple choice, to treat yourself as more than an image. Outside, the world still sells standards and they won't stop overnight, but your attention is powerful. What you focus on grows. If you feed the standard, it fattens. If you starve it, it weakens. You can't control every message that reaches you, but you can control which ones you let occupy space in your mind. That's not a perfect solution. It's simply a humane one. You take one more breath, steady and deep, letting it fill the parts of you that never benefited from being scrutinized. The pace slows now, and everything softens. You let your eyes rest, not searching for flaws, not scanning for proof, just resting. Your breathing settles into an easy rhythm, like waves that don't need permission to arrive. The world outside your room grows quieter, and the old noise of expectations fades into a distant hum. You remind yourself that your body isn't a problem to solve tonight. It's a place you live. It carries you through ordinary hours, through heavy thoughts, through bright moments, through small private battles nobody sees. You don't owe anyone a perfect surface. You don't owe anyone a performance. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to be real. You're allowed to be enough without adding another step, another product, another rule. The mirror can wait. The standards can wait. The invisible audience can drift away, bored when you stop feeding it. You imagine setting down a heavy bundle you didn't realize you were carrying. Your shoulders drop. Your jaw unclenches. Your forehead smooths. Your hands rest quietly, warm and steady. You picture a gentle light dimming, not suddenly but slowly, like a lamp being turned down until the room becomes a calm blur of comfort. You let the images dissolve. No advertisements, no fashion plates, no whispered judgments. Just the steady safety of your own breath moving in and out, easy as sleep. And as you drift, you hold one simple truth like a soft blanket. You're not here to be flawless. You're here to be human. That's already a full, worthy thing.